Chapter 1307. When he heard the first half of Gong Sunbei's words, Qin Feiyang was still calm, but when he heard the second half, his face immediately became gloomy. Wasn't it because of the current emperor? And he didn't want to think about this unbearable past. Seeing this, Gong Sunbei's heart trembled. Could there be some hidden story here? But what kind of hidden story could cause Qin Feiyang and the great Qin Empire to become enemies? However, Gong Sunbei was a smart person. Seeing the change in Qin Feiyang's face, he tactfully didn't pursue the matter. Gong Sunbei smiled. Since it's a cooperation, then I will personally take you to the Mu family's nest. Qin Feiyang was stunned and joked, I don't think I agreed to cooperate with you yet, right? If you cooperate with the head tower, not only can you eliminate our past grievances, but you can also get rid of the Mu family. It can be said to be killing two birds with one stone. To be honest, I really can't think of a reason for you to refuse. Gong Sunbei smiled. Haha, Qin Feiyang laughed and cupped his hands. Brother Gong Sun is wise and capable, this one admires you. You flatter me. Gong Sunbei waved his hand and smiled. No, I'm telling the truth. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the head tower master and sneered. To be honest, it's a big loss for you not to pass the position of head tower master to brother Gong Sun. The head tower master's face immediately became gloomy. When Gong Sunbei heard this, his eyes trembled slightly, and he immediately glanced at the head tower master with an uneasy expression. Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully. This was disdain for the head tower master. As the ruler of the Forgotten Continent, if he only had this little vision, he would be suppressed sooner or later. Qin Feiyang got up, looked at Gong Sunbei, and asked, When do we leave? So, Brother Qin agrees to cooperate? Gong Sunbei asked. Brother Gong Sun, how could I refuse your kind invitation? Qin Feiyang smiled. Gong Sunbei was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and smiled. We can set off at any time. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, Then let's wait a few days. Besides, since it's a cooperation, shouldn't the arrest warrant be removed? It will definitely be removed, but not now. After all, everyone knows that you have come to the Central Divine Kingdom. If we remove the arrest warrant now, the Mu family will definitely suspect our relationship. Gong Sunbei smiled. You can even think of this. Impressive. Qin Feiyang raised his thumb and said, When I'm ready, I'll come and find you. Goodbye. I won't see you out. Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyang glanced at the chief pagoda master and disappeared with the seal. Gong Sunbei let out a sigh of relief and shook his head. Negotiating with this guy is really troublesome. The chief tower master turned to look at him and said, Then do you feel a sense of accomplishment? Gong Sunbei was stunned and quickly bowed. This subordinate dares not. Chief pagoda master's eyes flashed with a cold light as he said, Just now, Qin Feiyang said that it would be a great loss for me if I don't pass the position of chief pagoda master to you. Tell me honestly, do you also think the same? Gong Sunbei's body trembled, and he hurriedly said, This subordinate has never thought so. Please understand. It's best not to have such thoughts. Otherwise, if I can cultivate you, I can also make you fall into the abyss. The chief tower master said. This subordinate will bear it in mind. Gong Sunbei bowed. Go prepare well. This time, no matter what, we must get the divine crystals back. If there is a chance, it would be best to kill Qin Feiyang as well. The chief tower master ordered, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Yes. Gong Sunbei respectfully replied, then turned around and strode away. Inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang looked at the chief tower master on the screen in front of him, and his eyes flashed coldly. Lu Zheng stood beside Qin Feiyang, shook his head and said, This person is too narrow-minded. Even if he has the cultivation of a 9-star combat emperor, it will be difficult for him to achieve great things. I don't care about him at all. The only person in the chief tower that I am afraid of is Gong Sunbei, other than the few fake gods. Qin Feiyang sneered. Lu Zheng said suspiciously, This Gong Sunbei has both ability and talent. Why would he follow the chief tower master so loyally? It should be for his belief. Gong Sunbei's belief is the chief tower. For the reputation of the chief tower, he can sacrifice everything. Perhaps in our eyes, he is a little foolish, but sometimes, aren't we the same? Qin Feiyong muttered. Everyone had their own beliefs. They would fight for their beliefs and die for their beliefs. The only difference was that everyone's beliefs were different. Gong Sunbei's belief was the chief tower. The commander of the Kirin army believed in the emperor. His belief was to protect his family and the empire left behind by his ancestors. Belief. Lu Zhang muttered to himself. Everyone had their own beliefs, but what was his? Next, Qin Feiyong began to cultivate in the ancient castle. Although the snow python only gave him half a month, he was confident that he could imitate the first stroke of the Xing character formula in less than half a month. Time passed quietly. 80 days had passed in the ancient castle. Only 8 days had passed in the outside world. Bas. Early in the morning, Qin Feiyong's fingertips trembled. The first stroke of the Xing character formula suddenly erupted with a dazzling divine light that illuminated the entire ancient castle. Boom! His cultivation soared like a volcanic eruption. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the level of a 2-star combat emperor. 10 days in the ancient castle is 1 day outside. This is really a cheat. Lu Zhang exclaimed. In the past few days, his cultivation had also advanced by leaps and bounds. Qin Feiyong glanced at Lu Zhang and said, I have a question that I can't figure out. What question? Lu Zhang looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyong said, Where did your Lu family get the recipes for the various pills that can unlock the door of potential? Lu Zhang rolled his eyes and said jokingly, It's a long story. Listen to me slowly. Okay. I'll listen to you slowly when I have time. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him and asked, Do you want to go out and join in the fun? 8 days had passed. There were only 7 days left. They could not delay any longer. It's such an interesting thing. Of course. Lu Zhang said. Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Then, he appeared in the hall again with Lu Zhang. In the past 8 days, the news of his return had spread throughout the Central Divine Kingdom. But no one knew that he was in the Chief Tower. As for Wang Yuer and young Master Hao, ever since they turned against Qin Feiyong, they had entered seclusion. And they were in seclusion. In addition, Gong Sunbei had deliberately concealed it, so they had not received any news until now. And now, in the entire Central Divine Kingdom, only the two of them did not know that Qin Feiyong had returned. In the attic. Sensing Qin Feiyong's aura, the Chief Tower Master immediately walked out of the cultivation room inside. He glanced at Lu Zhang suspiciously, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said in a deep voice, Have you been here all this time? No. I've been dealing with some personal matters these past few days. Qin Feiyong said. The Chief Tower Master secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If Qin Feiyong had been hiding here all this time, then the conversation between him and Gong Sunbei that day would have definitely been heard by Qin Feiyong. In that case, the plan to snatch back the divine crystals would undoubtedly be ruined. Qin Feiyong certainly knew what the Chief Tower Master was thinking, so he did not show any abnormalities and said indifferently, Time is of the essence. Quickly inform Gong Sunbei. The Chief Tower Master took out an image crystal and informed Gong Sunbei. Then he looked at Lu Zhang and asked, Who is he? I'm someone you can't afford to offend. Lu Zhang laughed arrogantly. A hint of hostility flashed in the Chief Tower Master's eyes. Lu Zhang continued, I'm not bragging, but with the forces behind me, I can destroy your Chief Tower with a wave of my hand. So you'd better be polite to my little cousin. What a big tone. The Chief Tower Master laughed sinisterly. Not only a big tone, but also a strong fist. How about it? Do you want to try? Lu Zhang looked at him provocatively. Good. You've successfully infuriated me. Killing intent flashed in the Chief Tower Master's eyes. Just as he was about to attack, Gong Sunbei arrived. Seeing the atmosphere, he hurriedly said, Sir, please calm down. Sir, you're the ruler of the Forgotten Continent. Why bother with a junior? Humph. The Chief Tower Master snorted through his nose. Suppressing the killing intent and anger in his heart, he said, Take them and leave immediately. Yes. Gong Sunbei respectfully replied. He waved his hand and opened a teleportation gate. Looking at Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang, he said telepathically, Let's go. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and stepped into the teleportation gate. Lu Zhang looked at the Chief Tower mockingly and followed in. Gong Sunbei smiled helplessly and cupped his hands, saying, Sir, if a battle breaks out later, I may ask the 3 ancestors of the Legacy Land for help. Please allow it. Do as you deem fit. The Chief Tower Master said expressionlessly. Meaning, he gave Gong Sun Bei full authority to deal with it. Thank you, sir. Gong Sun Bei thanked him and turned into a stream of light, rushing into the teleportation gate. Little bastard, just you wait. Sooner or later, I will make you regret what you did today. When the teleportation gate dissipated, the Chief Tower Master muttered to himself, his killing intent undisguised. Obviously. He bore a grudge against Lu Zhang again. At the same time, above a mountain range, Qin Feiyong and the other 2 appeared one after another. Below, the mountains rose and fell as far as the eye could see. As for the mountain streams, the vegetation was verdant, the rivers were surging, and the aura of berserk beasts was everywhere. Moreover, the weakest one was a War Master level berserk beast, and saint beasts were everywhere. One could even sense the aura of an emperor beast. Where is this? Qin Feiyong scanned the mountains and rivers suspiciously. Fire Phoenix Mountain Range. Gong Sun Bei said. What? You mean the Mu family's lair is in the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range? Qin Feiyong was surprised. Yes. Gong Sun Bei nodded. Qin Feiyong's expression stiffened. Of course, he knew about the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range. Back then, Fatso and Li He were in the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range, helping Yan Wei open the door to potential. He had heard of the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range more than once. It was said that berserk beasts ran rampant here, and it was a very dangerous place. But he never thought that the Mu family's lair would actually be here. Chapter 1308. Gong Sun Bei glanced at the mountain range and smiled. Although the Mu family's base is here, if no one leads the way, you won't be able to find it even if you turn the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range upside down. What do you mean? Qin Feiyong was surprised. Lu Zhang also looked at him curiously. There's only one entrance to the Mu family's base, and the Mu family set up an illusion at the entrance. This illusion can confuse people's eyes and minds. If you're lucky, you can walk out alive, but if you're unlucky, you'll be trapped inside and die. Gong Sun Bei said. I see. Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang were enlightened. Let's go. Gong Sun Bei took the lead and flew into the depths of the mountain range. Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang looked at each other and quickly followed. After flying for a while, Gong Sun Bei suddenly slowed down and walked side by side with Qin Feiyong. He said, I think you should be more polite to the Chief Tower Master. He's a selfish bastard. Why should we be polite to him? Lu Zhang said in disdain. Gong Sun Bei said, but he's the ruler of the Forgotten Continent after all. Angering him won't do you any good. Lu Zhang said, I'm really not afraid of him. Gong Sun Bei looked at Lu Zhang in surprise and looked at Qin Feiyong. He smiled and said, aren't you going to introduce him? My cousin. Qin Feiyong said 3 simple words. Lu Zhang said unhappily, Hey, is this how you introduce people? You should say, my cousin is a talented man, unparalleled in the world, loved by everyone, and flowers bloom when they see him. Scram. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. How shameless. Cousin. Gong Sun Bei murmured and looked at Lu Zhang meaningfully. Lu Zhang rolled his eyes and suddenly looked at Gong Sun Bei. He asked, Brother Gong Sun, don't you feel wronged staying with the Chief Tower Master? Wronged? Gong Sun Bei was stunned. He asked in confusion, why do you say that? My cousin told me about your situation. With your ability, you're definitely qualified to be the next Chief Tower Master. Yet now, this head pagoda master has excluded you for the sake of his own selfish desires. Could it be that you do not have the slightest complaint? Lu Zhang said angrily, feeling that it was unfair to Gong Sun Bei. Gong Sun Bei shook his head and smiled. You're really open-minded. But why don't you consider following my little cousin? Although my little cousin is a bit of a good-for-nothing, he's much better than the Chief Tower Master. I can guarantee that if you follow my little cousin, you will definitely be able to display your true talent. And your stage will become even bigger. Lu Zhang instigated. Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up. To be honest, if Gong Sun Bei was really willing to follow him, he would warmly welcome him. But what he valued was not Gong Sun Bei's ability and talent, but Gong Sunbei's character. Because Gong Sunbei was a person who knew how to repay kindness. Back in the Chief Tower, when he snatched the divine crystal, Gong Sunbei let him go on account of his ancestors' kindness to the Forgotten Continent. This was the best proof. At the same time, hearing Lu Zheng's words, Gong Sunbei was stunned. He didn't expect that Lu Zheng would ask him to join Qin Feiyang. Moreover, if you follow my cousin, you can open the door of potential that everyone dreams of. This is a great benefit that others can't even ask for. Lu Zheng continued to tempt him. Haha. However, Gong Sunbei just smiled indifferently. If I were just an ordinary person, I would definitely be tempted by your offer. But I'm not an ordinary person. I'm the temple master of the Oracle Temple. The meaning of this sentence was very clear. No matter how tempting the offer was, he would not leave the Chief Tower. You're really stubborn. Lu Zheng was a little annoyed. This is not stubbornness, it's responsibility. It's responsibility. Gong Sunbei smiled. Lu Zheng still wanted to say something, but Qin Feiyang reached out to stop him. He smiled faintly. Everyone has their own aspirations. There's no need to force yourself. However, he was more and more satisfied with Gong Sunbei. Responsibility. Responsibility. Everyone understood the meaning of these words, but how many people could really do it? Fire Phoenix Mountain Range, layers upon layers of mountains, majestic and magnificent. The three of them continued to go deeper. The beasts they encountered were also getting stronger and stronger. Battle Master level beasts were basically nowhere to be found. They were all sacred beasts. As they continued to go deeper, gradually, even sacred beasts could not be found. They were all emperor beasts. However, the cultivation of the three of them was not ordinary. Ordinary emperor beasts were not a threat to them. Time flew by. Half an hour passed. The three of them had already entered the deepest part of the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range. The lowest cultivation of the beasts here was a 5-star battle emperor. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Qin Feiyang could only call out the seal and the seahorse. With the seal and the seahorse, they could basically do whatever they wanted in the Fire Phoenix Mountain Range. Not there yet. Lu Zheng began to get impatient. Soon. Gong Sunbei looked ahead and said. Qin Feiyang followed his gaze and saw a majestic mountain range at the end of the earth. The mountain range stretched up and down. Some places were as high as thousands of feet. And the shortest place was 700 to 800 feet. It was like a giant dragon lying on the ground, emitting a mysterious aura. The entrance is somewhere in the mountain range. But when we get here, we should try not to get entangled with the beasts here. Because here, we might encounter the Mu family at any time. Gong Sunbei whispered. Qin Feiyang nodded and whispered, Seahorse seal, quickly restrain your aura. What are you afraid of? If one comes, we'll kill one. If two comes, we'll kill two. The seahorse and the seahorse laughed. As the beast kings of the Sea of Reincarnation, they were ruthless characters like wolves and tigers, so they didn't put the Mu family in their eyes at all. Qin Feiyang's face twitched, and he said playfully, I hope that when we see the fake gods of the Mu family, you can still be as powerful as you are now. What? Fake gods? As soon as the two beasts heard this, they immediately retracted their aura. Do you know what you're doing? Lu Zheng looked at them in amusement. What? The two looked at him suspiciously. Lu Zheng said disdainfully, You're a typical bully. TSK. Aren't you the same? Not convinced? Then go and fight the fake gods of the Mu family for 300 rounds. If you really dare to go, we'll call you uncle. The two snorted coldly. Lu Zheng's mouth kept twitching. Fight the fake gods for 300 rounds? Isn't that courting death? You don't dare, right? Then don't talk about us. You're no different from us. The two despised him. Despised? Lu Zheng smiled bitterly. These two guys are not easy to deal with. Roar. Boom. Crack. In front. Suddenly, there was a deafening sound of fighting. There's someone. Gong Sunbei was shocked and hurriedly said, Quickly enter the jungle below. No need. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, looked at the two beasts and said, Come to my shoulder. The two beasts quickly shrank to the size of a palm and landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder, each occupying one side. Immediately after, Qin Feiyong grabbed Lu Zheng and Gong Sun Bei and directly activated the concealment technique. The 3 men and 2 beasts immediately disappeared into the void. In front, above a jungle, 2 young men in black and a black eagle were fighting crazily. The terrifying battle fluctuations rushed in all directions like mountains and seas. In less than a few breaths, the jungle and mountains below were destroyed, and it was a scene of devastation. The berserk beasts in this area fled at the sight of the battle. The 2 men and 1 beast were locked in a fierce battle, and did not notice that a group of people was quietly approaching. This group of people was naturally Qin Feiyong and the others. I recognize them. Gong Sun Bei transmitted his voice after seeing the faces of the 2 young men in black. Who are they? Qin Feiyong asked. The Mu family has many monstrous geniuses, and they are 2 of them. They have only cultivated for 500 years and have the cultivation of a 3-star combat emperor. Gong Sun Bei said. To the people of the Mu family, to cultivate to a 3-star combat emperor in 500 years, can they be considered monstrous geniuses? I think they are idiots. Lu Zheng snorted. Gong Sun Bei's face was filled with astonishment. To cultivate to a 3-star combat emperor in 500 years, they were considered idiots in this person's eyes? What a joke. If they were idiots, then what was he? A trash that was worse than an idiot? Qin Feiyong said, I agree with cousin's words. What? You agree? Gong Sun Bei was speechless. These 2 fellows were really talking without knowing their own backsides. He admitted. To Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng, cultivating to a combat emperor in 500 years was indeed not a difficult thing. This was because Qin Feiyong had the method to unlock the door of potential. However, in this world, not everyone had unlocked the door of potential. It wasn't an exaggeration. To be able to step into a combat emperor in 500 years without unlocking the door of potential was definitely a rare and monstrous existence. Qin Feiyong glanced at the 2 young men in black, then turned to Gong Sun Bei and asked with a smile, Do you know why I agree? Why? Gong Sun Bei didn't understand. Qin Feiyong said, Because they have unlocked the door of potential. What? Gong Sun Bei's gaze trembled as he sized up the 2 young men in black and asked, Have you seen them before? Never. Qin Feiyong shook his head. Then how do you know? Gong Sun Bei was surprised. Qin Feiyong said, Because the ancestor of the Mu family also had the method to unlock the door of potential. Gong Sun Bei was stunned and couldn't say a word for a long time. The ancestor of the Mu family was called Mu Tianyang. This person was an existence that could be compared to my ancestor when he was alive. He had a pill scripture that recorded all the pill recipes in the world. It included the pill recipes of all the major pills that could unlock the door of potential. Qin Feiyong said. Mu Tianyang? Gong Sun Bei was stunned as he looked at Qin Feiyong and said, I've heard of this name. You've heard of it? This time, it was Qin Feiyong who was stunned. Yes. Chapter 1309. That's right. He lost to my ancestor. But he's not dead. Qin Feiyong said. Not dead? Gong Sun Bei was surprised. Yes. He's still alive and well. He's hiding in the Great Qin Empire. Qin Feiyong nodded. Do you know where he's hiding? Gong Sun Bei asked. Yes. We're still in a cooperative relationship now. Qin Feiyong faintly smiled. You're cooperating with him? Gong Sun Bei was dumbfounded. As a descendant of the Qin Emperor, he was actually cooperating with the Qin Emperor's mortal enemy? Was this kid crazy? Don't think too much. Although we're in a cooperative relationship, we're just using each other to get what we need. Qin Feiyong said. Even so, it's still too risky. You're asking a tiger for its skin. If you're not careful, you'll be eaten by him. Gong Sun Bei was speechless. Even if he wants to eat me now, his stomach won't be able to hold it. Qin Feiyong sneered. Why do you say that? Gong Sun Bei was puzzled. Although my ancestor didn't kill him back then, his soul was shattered and his vitality was greatly damaged. His current strength is probably less than 1% of his peak strength. Qin Feiyong said. So that's how it is. Gong Sun Bei was relieved and smiled. If that's the case, then we can still act according to the original plan. The original plan? Qin Feiyong was stunned and looked at Gong Sun Bei strangely. Don't tell me you're going to change the plan after hearing that Mu Tianyang is still alive? Gong Sunbei smiled bitterly and didn't deny it. After all, Mu Tianyang is a true god of war. My chief pagoda can't afford to offend him. Qin Feiyong was helpless. How much do you know about Mu Tianyang? I just heard it from the chief pagoda master. How much can I know? I just didn't expect the Mu family to be a descendant of Mu Tianyang. Gong Sunbei sighed. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. Does the chief know the details of the Mu Jia? Is there even a need to ask? He definitely doesn't know. Although the chief tower master is somewhat selfish, I know that he cares about the safety of the Forgotten Continent more than anyone else. To put it bluntly, he cares about power and influence. He won't let anyone threaten his position. So, if he knew, he definitely wouldn't allow the Mu family to remain in the Forgotten Continent. Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyong nodded. That's right. Even though he hadn't known the chief tower master for long, he still had a good grasp of the latter's personality. If someone really threatened his position, he would find a way to get rid of them immediately. Furthermore, if the chief pagoda master really knew about it, he wouldn't let go of a good opportunity to extort the Mu Jia, such as the potential pill. However, even young Master Hao hadn't been able to unlock his potential before he had met him. From this, it could be seen that the chief pagoda master was indeed unaware. These damned bastards, they actually deceived us for so many years. This time, we must catch them all in one fell swoop. Gong Sunbei coldly harumphed, his hands tightly clenched, killing intent surging in his eyes. Only today did he know that the Mu family was originally using the Forgotten Continent to rest and build up strength, waiting for Mu Tianyang's return. Lu Zhang indifferently glanced at him. Then now, are you still going to deny my words? Gong Sunbei was stunned, then bitterly smiled. Even though they have unlocked their potential, but to be able to cultivate to the level of a 3-star combat emperor in such a short period of time, they can't be considered idiots. Their talent is still not bad. TCH. Lu Zhang disdainfully raised his middle finger. Qin Feiyong sized up the two black-clothed youths. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he turned his head to look at Gong Sunbei. Oh right, why did the chief tower master take in the Mu family? If you say that he was kind enough to take them in, I really don't believe it. Because the chief tower master wasn't that kind of person. This, I really don't know. A few times, I've asked him indirectly, but the chief tower master has always been secretive and unwilling to answer directly. Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyong frowned. It seemed that there was some kind of unknown benefit relationship between them. Boom. Crack. The battle between the two black-clothed youths and the Black Hawk had reached its climax. The Black Hawk was a 4-star combat emperor beast. Even though it was a minor realm higher than the two youths, both of them had mastered several perfect battle arts. Therefore, the Black Hawk was gradually losing. Qin Feiyong asked, what are their names? Mu Sheng, Mu Xing, Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyong said, not only do you know their names, but you also know their cultivation base. Looks like you're quite concerned about the Mu family. Gong Sunbei said, to tell you the truth, I've been monitoring the Mu family all these years. Qin Feiyong was startled then smiled. Then, what did Brother Gong Sun find out? Gong Sunbei shook his head and smiled. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. Even though I've been monitoring them all these years, I've only managed to sneak into the Mu family's base once, and I was almost discovered in the end. Qin Feiyong smiled. This wasn't out of his expectations. Who was the Mu family? There would definitely be experts guarding the entrance. It would be harder than ascending to the heavens to sneak in. Even though Gong Sunbei had only managed to sneak in once, it was already very rare. Qin Feiyong looked at the two black-clothed youths again with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. Why were these two fighting the Black Hawk? Training? However, there were countless ferocious beasts that were more powerful than the Black Hawk. Training here was definitely not a wise thing to do. Mu Xing, we can't delay any longer. Otherwise, we'll attract those powerful 9-star combat emperor beasts. Quickly use your full strength. Mu Sheng suddenly shouted. Mu Xing nodded. Boom! Both of their bodies shook as they activated their fighting souls at the same time. Both of their fighting souls were humanoid fighting souls. They were more than 100 feet tall and emitted a monstrous murderous aura. However, their bodies were shrouded in black mist, and their true appearance could not be seen clearly. Kill! Both of them shouted. The two humanoid fighting souls raised their giant hands and slapped at the Black Hawk. The Black Hawk knew that it was no match for them, so it turned around and fled. However, the two fighting souls were extremely fast and arrived in an instant. Chirp! Accompanied by a wail, the Black Hawk's huge body was immediately split into 4 or 5 pieces. Blood stained the sky. After killing the Black Hawk, the two of them immediately broke through the sky and left. Lu Zhang said, "Follow them." Qin Feiyang nodded and led Lu Zhang and Gongsun Bei behind the two of them silently. Soon, an inconspicuous small valley entered their line of sight. Mu Shang and Gongsun Bei directly rushed into the small valley. Qin Feiyang and the other two followed behind. The small valley was only about 100 feet wide and was covered with weeds and shrubs. It looked extremely desolate. What are they doing here? This doesn't look like a place with treasures. Lu Zheng frowned. There's the Black Hawk's aura here. This means that this is the Black Hawk's nest. Qin Feiyang muttered. There was a saying that one could not judge a book by its cover. Sometimes the more inconspicuous a place was, the more likely it was to have treasures. At this moment, Mu Xing and Gongsun Bei were walking towards a shrub on the right side of the valley. The closer they got to the shrub, the more excited they became. It was as if there was a treasure hidden in the shrub. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other and flew over silently. They lowered their heads and scanned the shrub. This shrub was no different from an ordinary shrub. The ground was a little damp and covered with a thick layer of dead branches and rotten leaves. It emitted a rotten smell. And within the shrub, there was a strange grass. This grass was only as long as a finger and had 3 slender leaves. The reason why it was strange was that this grass was completely black and emitted a cold aura. What's this? Gongsun Bei was suspicious. This was the first time he had seen such a strange grass. At this moment, Mu Xing and Gongsun Bei also came to the shrub and locked their eyes on the black grass. The excitement on their faces could not be concealed. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them and then looked at the black grass again. His eyes were full of doubts. He was sure that he had never seen this grass before, but for some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity. This is the Darkeen grass. Lu Zhang suddenly transmitted his voice. Darkeen grass. Qin Feiyang was stunned and turned to look at Lu Zhang. He found that Lu Zhang was looking at the Darkeen grass with greed in his eyes. Wait a minute. Darkeen grass? Why did this name sound so familiar? Suddenly, his eyes trembled and looked at the Darkeen grass again. His eyes were shining. Wasn't the Darkeen grass one of the herbs in the Great Creation Pill? Moreover, if he remembered correctly, it was one of the most important herbs. He was excited. He did not expect to encounter such a treasure on the way. The most important herbs of the Great Creation Pill were the Creation Fruit, White Jade Fruit, Purple Spirit Flower, Dark Yang Grass, and Darkeen Grass. The Darkeen Grass was ranked 5th. It could be seen how rare it was. The Darkeen Grass is rare in the world. When we hand it to the family head, we will definitely be able to exchange it for a generous reward. Mu Xing and Gongsun Bei cleared the shrub happily and squatted beside the Darkeen grass. They took out their daggers and started digging. I'm afraid you won't have the chance to get this reward. But at this moment, there was a laugh. Who is it? The two of them were shocked. They looked up and scanned their surroundings. They didn't notice that there was someone else hiding here? Swish! Qin Feiyang and the others appeared. What? Qin Feiyang. Gongsun Bei. The two's face changed. Qin Feiyang joked. Are you surprised? Aren't you in the Great Qin Empire? When did you come to Forgotten Continent? The two were shocked. 8 days ago. Qin Feiyang said. Then what are you doing here? The two were surprised. Qin Feiyang grinned. Of course I'm here for your Mu family. Damn it. Let's go. The two secretly cursed and turned around to escape. Gongsun Bei hurriedly said. Don't let them escape. Once the two escaped, the Mu family would know that their tower has joined forces with Qin Feiyang. At that time, they would be prepared in advance. Don't worry, they can't escape. Qin Feiyang chuckled and glanced at the seal and seahorse lying on his shoulder. He said, What are you still doing lying there? Go and deal with them. Yes. The two beasts lazily responded and left Qin Feiyang's shoulder and flew towards Mu Xing and Gongsun Bei. To be honest, They weren't interested in such a small fish at all. They couldn't raise their spirits at all. Ah! There was no suspense. Chapter 13:10. Boring. Boring. The two beasts returned to Qin Feiyong's shoulder and said uninterestedly. Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Don't worry, you'll have a chance to show off soon. After that, Qin Feiyong took out Chang Shui and uprooted the Xianin grass. Seeing this, Lu Zheng hurriedly grabbed Qin Feiyong's wrist and asked, Little cousin, you're not going to take it for yourself, are you? Qin Feiyong was slightly stunned. He looked up at Lu Zheng and said, You want a share? Nonsense. I've never heard of it. Everyone who sees it gets a share? Lu Zheng snorted. Sorry, I've never heard of it. Qin Feiyong smiled and put away Chang Shui and the Xianin grass. You? Lu Zheng stared at Qin Feiyong angrily. Such a rare treasure was hard to come by in 100 years. He didn't even give him a leaf. It was too much. Gong Sunbei looked at the two suspiciously and asked curiously, What's the use of this Xianin grass? It looks good. Lu Zheng glanced at Gong Sunbei indifferently and then turned to search the valley. Gong Sunbei's face suddenly twitched. What is he looking for? Seahorse looked at Lu Zheng and asked Qin Feiyong secretly. If I remember correctly, it is recorded in the pill scripture that yin and yang exist together. Where there is Xianin grass, there must be Xianin grass. I think he must be looking for Xianin grass. Qin Feiyong said secretly. Hearing this, the two beasts suddenly became spirited and said secretly, What does Xianin grass look like? It's similar to Xianin grass, but the color is different. Xianin grass is as black as ink, while Xianin grass is as red as fire. Qin Feiyong said. Look for it. Don't let them get it. Seahorse said secretly. The two beasts immediately flew out and began to search the valley. Qin Feiyong glanced around and also stepped forward to search carefully. What's the situation? Gong Sunbei looked at them suspiciously. Bastard brat. How dare you take the profound yin grass for yourself? Wait till I find the profound yang grass. I won't share it with you. Lu Zheng glanced at Qin Feiyong and the two seals. He snorted inwardly and quickened his pace. His eyes swept around, not missing a single spot. Suddenly, he stopped and looked up at the cliff on his left. On the cliff a dozen meters above the ground, there was a half-meter wide crack, and within the crack, there was an imperceptible flame. Whoosh! He hurriedly flew up and saw a fiery red blade of grass in the crack. The shape of the grass was almost exactly the same as the profound yin grass. The three leaves looked as if they were cast from lava, emitting a crimson luster. Found it. Lu Zheng was overjoyed and was about to grab it. Whoosh! But just then, the seal and seahorse flashed across the sky like lightning and swept behind Lu Zheng. Get out of the way! Seahorse raised its hoof and kicked Lu Zheng's butt. Ow! Lu Zheng immediately let out a miserable howl like a pig being slaughtered. He covered his butt with both hands and flew into the sky like a meteorite. At the same time, the seal shrunk its body, swept into the crack, and pulled out the profound yang grass. You two bastards! I found it first. What right do you have to take it away? Seeing this, Lu Zheng was furious. He roared and rushed toward the two beasts, ignoring the pain in his butt. The two beasts laughed, turned into a stream of light, and landed on Qin Feiyong's shoulder. Here you go. The seal waved its paw and the profound yang grass fell into Qin Feiyong's hand. Not bad, not bad. This is the profound yang grass. Qin Feiyong chuckled. His face was blooming with joy. Little cousin, you've gone too far. Lu Zheng was furious. Who dares to barge into my Fire Phoenix mountain range? But suddenly, a cold voice came from afar. The three men and two beasts were shocked. They looked up and saw a white figure rushing toward them like lightning. It was a middle-aged man. He was 2 meters tall and muscular like a small giant. It's him. Gong Sunbei's eyes trembled. Who? Qin Feiyong asked. Gong Sunbei said in a deep voice, The guardian of the illusion, Mu Dahui. He has the cultivation of a 9-star combat emperor. Your cousin's roar must have alarmed him. 9-star combat emperor, Qin Feiyong murmured. His eyes flashed coldly and he said to the two beasts, You two hide and prepare to kill him in one blow. Piece of cake. The two beasts laughed sinisterly. Then, they disappeared into the underbrush below in an instant. Lu Zheng raised his eyebrows and also landed beside Qin Feiyang. Gong Sunbei also immediately rushed to Qin Feiyang's side. A 9-star combat emperor was not someone Mu Xing and the other two could compare to. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives. Whoosh! Finally! Mu Dahui came to the sky above the valley. Qin Feiyang said telepathically, "Hurry up and pretend to run away." After that, he immediately turned around and ran away in a panic. Lu Zhang and Gong Sunbei looked at each other suspiciously and also began to run away. Stop! Seeing the backs of Qin Feiyang and the other two, Mu Dahui's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he shouted. The three of them stiffened and stopped. Qin Feiyang lowered his voice and changed it slightly. "Senior, we didn't mean to break in here. Please have mercy." But the three of them did not turn around. Mu Dahui could still only see their backs. Mu Dahui glanced at Lu Zheng's back, then stared at Qin Feiyang and Gong Sunbei's backs. "I feel that your backs are somewhat familiar. Turn around and let me see. This is the first time we have entered the Fire Phoenix mountain range. Senior must have mistaken us for someone else." Qin Feiyang said fearfully, but he still changed his voice. "Don't talk nonsense. Turn around right now." Mu Dahui shouted, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Qin Feiyang was hesitant. "It seems that I have to use some means to make you obedient." Mu Dahui smiled coldly. His emperor's aura poured out and instantly enveloped Qin Feiyang and the other two. Then, he swooped down and landed behind Qin Feiyang and the other two, reaching out to grab Qin Feiyang and Gong Sunbei's shoulders. Boom! However, at this moment, two terrifying auras erupted. The seahorse and the seal rushed out, their battle chi surging. Like two sharp arrows, they pierced through Mu Dahui's lower abdomen. Ah! A scream resounded through the sky. Mu Dahui immediately lay on the ground, clutching his lower abdomen, his face twisted in pain. Two fist-sized bloody holes penetrated his front and back, blood spurting out like a fountain. Lu Zheng and Gong Sunbei also suddenly realized. It turned out that Qin Feiyang pretended to escape in order to lure Mu Dahui. After all, everyone in the Mu family knew what Qin Feiyang looked like. They also knew Qin Feiyang's methods. If Mu Dahui saw Qin Feiyang's face in advance, he would definitely be vigilant. He might even turn around and run away. The seahorse and seal's ambush would naturally not succeed. "Boss Qin, what do you think? Aren't we awesome?" The seahorse and seahorse glanced at Mu Dahui in disdain, then ran to Qin Feiyang to ask for a reward. "Awesome!" Qin Feiyang nodded and turned to look at Mu Dahui. This voice. Qin Feiyang did not change his voice this time. Mu Dahui suddenly felt that this voice was very familiar. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. When he saw Qin Feiyang's face, he could not help but tremble. How could it be him? "Qin Feiyang," Qin Feiyang said playfully, "your expression is exactly the same as Mu Xing and the others." "You saw Mu Xing and Mu Sheng?" Mu Dahui was shocked. "Of course." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Where are they? What did you do to them?" Mu Dahui said angrily. "Do you still need to ask? They will definitely not have a good ending when they meet me, Qin Feiyang." Qin Feiyang laughed. "You damned bastard. Everyone in the Mu family will not let you off." Mu Dahui roared. "We should be the ones saying this. We will not let go of anyone in your Mu family." Gong Sunbei's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Gong Sunbei." Mu Dahui's eyes trembled, and he said in a deep voice, "You actually helped Qin Feiyang. Are you not afraid of the Chief Tower's blame?" Gong Sunbei sneered. "Sorry, but it was the Chief Tower's order to join hands with Qin Feiyang." "What?" Mu Dahui's face was filled with disbelief. The Chief Tower had joined hands with Qin Feiyang? Damn it! How could this be? How did Qin Feiyang convince the Chief Pagoda Master? Mu Dahui roared. "Did you forget that it was Qin Feiyang who stole your divine crystals? Stop pretending. Isn't your Mu family also eyeing the divine crystals? You despicable scum, even if you are cut into pieces, it will not be enough to relieve the hatred in my heart." Gong Sunbei's killing intent rose. "Wait." Qin Feiyang reached out and stopped Gong Sunbei. "What's wrong?" Gong Sun Bei looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyong transmitted his voice. Let's kill him later. I have a few questions to ask him. Gong Sun Bei nodded and thought to himself. Then ask. Qin Feiyong turned to look at Mu Dahui, and his emperor's aura appeared, imprisoning Mu Dahui. Emperor's aura. Mu Dahui was shocked. He remembered that when Qin Feiyong left the Forgotten Continent, he was only a 4-star battle saint. How long had it been? He had already stepped into the Battle Emperor realm. This speed, even if he opened the door of potential, it was impossible to achieve. Just as Mu Dahui was shocked, Qin Feiyong formed a hand seal, and a slave seal appeared and swept toward Mu Dahui's head. Mu Dahui's expression changed again. His first thought was to kill himself. Although he had never seen Qin Feiyong before, Qin Feiyong's deeds had long been spread in the family, and everyone knew about it. Therefore, he knew that this was a slave seal. However, imprisoned by Qin Feiyong's emperor's aura, he couldn't kill himself even if he wanted to. The slave seal sank into Mu Dahui's head and successfully controlled him. Qin Feiyong said, Now answer me, how many false gods and 9-star battle emperors does your Mu family have? Other than the space-time gate, do you have any other divine weapons? After asking this question, he secretly peeked at Mu Dahui's inner thoughts. Because he didn't expect Mu Dahui to answer him at all. Therefore, he used this method to get the answer he wanted to know. However, he found that after hearing his question, Mu Dahui's heart was like a dead sea, without any ripples. It seems that the people from the Mu family are as difficult to deal with as the people from the Zhuge family. It's basically impossible to get anything out of them. Chapter 13:11. However, he did not give up and continued. As long as you tell me the truth, I'll let you live. Do you think I'll believe your bullshit? Mu Dahui sneered. I swear in the name of my mother. You should know how important my mother is to me, so as long as you're willing to tell me, I won't go back on my word. Qin Feiyong said. In your dreams. Mu Dahui said. Qin Feiyong clenched his fists and said, Then let me ask you again. Is there anyone from the Mu family in the Endless Ocean now? The Endless Ocean? Gong Sun Bei was stunned. Why did Qin Feiyong ask this? Could it be that the mysterious madam was in the Endless Ocean? Mu Dahui said disdainfully, Don't waste your breath. I won't say anything. If you want to kill me, do it. Phew. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said lightly, Brother Gong Sun, deal with it as you see fit. Gong Sun Bei's eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. Gong Sun Bei, let me tell you. You'll regret cooperating with Qin Feiyong sooner or later. Because no one in the main tower can beat him. Mu Dahui said contemptuously. You don't have to worry about that. Go repent in hell. Gong Sun Bei waved his hand, and a wave of battle aura swept out like a sharp blade. Mu Dahui's head immediately fell to the ground, and blood spurted out a few meters away. Do you feel better now? Qin Feiyong asked with a smile. How can I vent if I don't kill them all? Gong Sun Bei smiled coldly. Qin Feiyong said, Then let's go. What about this body? If the Mu family finds it, it won't be good for us. Gong Sun Bei said worriedly. Don't worry. There are ferocious beasts everywhere here. Soon, not even a drop of blood will be left. Qin Feiyong laughed. Gong Sun Bei nodded, and then continued to rush toward the mountain ridge with the 2 men and 2 beasts. On the way, everyone hid their aura and went around the 9-star monarch beasts. Along the way, there was no danger. Finally, the 3 humans and 2 beasts arrived at the foot of the mountain ridge. The mountains towered into the clouds, exuding a majestic aura. Mountain streams, towering ancient trees, and ferocious beasts. Moreover, they were basically 5-star to 8-star monarch beasts. There were also 9-star monarch beasts' auras on the peaks of the mountain range. This place was like a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. A moment of carelessness and you would lose your little life. The entrance to the Mu family's lair is right there. Gong Sun Bei pointed at one of the giant peaks. Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng raised their heads and looked over. They saw a giant mountain that was 50 to 60,000 feet high, like a giant sword that pierced the sky. That giant peak was also the highest peak in the mountain range. Follow me. Gong Sun Bei said in a low voice and flew towards the mountain peak. However, he did not fly in the air. Because they were flying at high altitudes, they were a huge target and could easily be intercepted by 9-star monarch beasts. Along the way, Gong Sunbei also skillfully avoided one fierce beast after another. Obviously, he was extremely familiar with this place. A moment later, under Gong Sunbei's lead, the group finally reached the mountain peak. However, the moment they reached the mountain peak, both Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng's expressions changed. Their faces were filled with horror. As for the seahorse and the seal, they immediately turned around and fled in fear. "Why are you running? Stop!" Gong Sunbei shouted in a low voice. The seahorse said without turning its head, "Nonsense, there are so many 9-star monarch beasts. If we don't run, we'll be waiting for death." That's right. On this mountain peak, there were fierce beasts lying everywhere. The mountain peak was not big. There were rocks and weeds everywhere. However, between the weeds and rocks, there were at least 100 fierce beasts. There were all kinds of beasts. They were all closing their eyes and taking a nap. The aura they emitted was, without exception, that of a 9-star combat emperor. 100 9-star monarch beasts. What kind of concept was that? Once they were awakened, it could be described as apocalyptic. Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng also broke out in cold sweat. They were afraid that these fierce beasts would suddenly awaken. Gong Sunbei looked at the seahorse and seal helplessly and said, "They're not real." "What? They're not real?" The seahorse and seal were stunned. They turned around and glanced at the hundreds of 9-star monarch beasts. Whether it was their appearance or aura, they were extremely real. How could they be fake? The seal said warily, "We're still young. Don't fool us." "Why would I fool you?" Gong Sunbei rolled his eyes. He took a step forward and landed next to a fierce beast. He kicked it, and the fierce beast immediately disappeared from everyone's sight like a bubble. This, Qin Feiyang was stunned. Lu Zheng was also stunned. The eyes of the seal and the seahorse almost popped out of their sockets. "This is the illusion I told you about," Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and landed on the top of the mountain one after another. They walked toward Gong Sunbei while looking at the fierce beasts around them in amazement. The seal imitated Gong Sunbei and raised its paw to slap a few fierce beasts. Those fierce beasts immediately collapsed and disappeared. Amazing! Looking at this scene, the seal couldn't help but marvel. Qin Feiyang walked in front of Gong Sunbei and shook his head. "I didn't expect the Mu family to set up such an illusion at the entrance. As you said, without someone to lead the way, it's really impossible to find the entrance." Lu Zheng sighed. "Even if you can find it, seeing so many vivid 9-star monarch beasts, you'll definitely be scared witless like the seahorse and seal." Hearing this, the seal and seal were quite embarrassed. Qin Feiyang looked at the other peaks and asked, "Are the 9-star monarch beasts on those peaks also illusions?" "They're all real. Don't mess with them. Follow me." After Gong Sunbei finished speaking, he turned and walked toward the other side of the mountain peak. Qin Feiyang and the others quickly followed. Soon, they came to the edge of the cliff and entered their sight of a sea of clouds. The sea of clouds was bottomless and surrounded by clouds and mist, giving people an unfathomable sense of mystery. And within the sea of clouds, there were countless 9-star monarch beasts' auras. The group was looking curiously. Roar! Suddenly, in the distant sea of clouds, a fierce beast roared out. It was as huge as a mountain and exuded a monstrous divine power. Divine power. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. There was a divine beast here. Gong Sunbei, is the Mu family under the sea of clouds? Lu Zheng asked, his eyes full of nervousness. The seahorse and seal were so scared that they hid behind Qin Feiyang, trembling. Gong Sunbei smiled. "Don't be nervous. The sea of clouds and the divine beast are also illusions." "What?" The 2 men and 2 beasts were shocked. "There are a total of 3 illusions here. The first illusion is these 9-star monarch beasts on the mountain peak, and the second illusion is the sea of clouds and the divine beast," Gong Sunbei said. The 2 men and 2 beasts looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. It turned out that they were just scaring themselves. The divine beast did not exist at all. "Wait." Suddenly, Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "We've seen the first and second layer of the illusion. Where is the third layer of the illusion?" Gong Sunbei did not answer. Hide your aura and follow me. After speaking, he took the lead to hide his aura to the extreme and then stepped into the sky above the sea of clouds. The moment he stepped into the sky above the sea of clouds, Gongsun Bei disappeared from their sight. This, Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. This place is too strange. Hurry up and follow him. Don't get lost. Lu Zheng said. The two men and two beasts also hid their aura and stepped into the sky above the sea of clouds. They found that they had appeared in front of a canyon, and Gongsun Bei was standing next to them. The seahorse said in surprise, "Didn't we enter the sea of clouds? Why is it a canyon?" Didn't you hear Gongsun Bei say that the sea of clouds is just an illusion? I think this canyon is the real thing. Lu Zheng said thoughtfully. The canyon was still surrounded by clouds and mist, giving it a mysterious feeling. Behind them, the mountain peak they were on before had disappeared and was replaced by clouds and mist. At this moment, it was as if they were standing in a fairyland. It was very unreal. Gongsun Bei said telepathically, "The third illusion is in this canyon." When they heard this, they immediately looked into the canyon and saw many beasts lying in the canyon. There was a giant python, a poisonous scorpion, a fierce tiger, and a dragon. In short, all the beasts they had seen before were here. The most shocking part was that all of them were actually 9th star emperor beasts. Needless to say, they must be fake too. The seahorse smiled and strode into the canyon. However, as soon as the seahorse took its first step, Gongsun Bei pulled it back and said, "Do you want to die?" "Why?" The seahorse looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang, Lu Zhang, and the seal also looked at Gongsun Bei in confusion. "Do you know why I asked you to hide your aura? Because the beasts in this canyon are not all illusions. Some of them are real. If we don't hide our aura, we will be discovered as soon as we appear," Gongsun Bei said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the seahorse immediately jumped behind Qin Feiyang like a frightened rabbit. According to my investigation, there are at least 10 9-star emperor beasts in these illusions. They are here to guard the canyon. And at the end of the canyon is the Mu clan's nest. Gongsun Bei said. Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, 10 9-star emperor beasts are nothing, but if they are alarmed, it is equivalent to alarm the entire Mu clan. We still haven't figured out the Mu clan's background, so we can't be discovered by them. Yes, we can't be discovered by them. Qin Feiyang nodded, pondered for a moment, and said, "Let's go to the castle." After saying that, he waved his hand, and the group suddenly disappeared. Not long after the group of people disappeared, a blood-red falcon flew out of the canyon like lightning and scanned the surroundings suspiciously. Strange. I clearly felt that someone broke in just now. Why is there not even a shadow now? Could it be an illusion? The falcon muttered, looked around carefully, and then turned back to the canyon. That was close. Fortunately, we came to the castle. Otherwise, we would have been caught red-handed. Inside the castle. Looking at the falcon that disappeared in the picture, Gongsun Bei was scared. Then, he turned his head to look at the castle and said in surprise, "Is this the spatial divine item that you are hiding in?" Qin Feiyang nodded. Then, he piloted the ancient castle and flew into the canyon. Chapter 13:12. Inside the canyon. There were all kinds of beasts that looked very real. Some were lying on the ground and taking a nap. Some were looking around with disdain and majesty. It was impossible to tell which one was real and which one was fake. What's going on? There are only these few people in the castle? At the same time, Gongsun Bei glanced at Viper, Dan Wang Kai, Wang Xiaojia, Black Dragon Snake, and the other beasts. His eyes were full of suspicion. Was this Qin Feiyang's foundation? He originally thought that since Qin Feiyang was so arrogant in front of the chief tower master, there must be a large number of experts hidden in the castle. However, he did not expect that there were only these few people. Moreover, their strength was not that great. In other words, apart from the 2 9-star emperor beasts, the seahorse and the seal, Qin Feiyang did not have any powerful experts around him. This kid had been pretending to be mysterious. However, he's quite good at pretending. Even the chief tower master and I were fooled by him. Gongsun Bei muttered to himself as he pursed his lips in self-mockery. However, he did not know that Qin Feiyang's true foundation was not in the castle, but in the tower. Wait, Gong Sunbei suddenly looked at Viper and Dan Wong Kai. Both of them had their backs facing Gong Sunbei, but their backs were familiar to Gong Sunbei. Gong Sunbei asked suspiciously, "You two, have I seen you somewhere before?" Qin Feiyong unnoticeably raised his eyebrows. This was what he was worried about. If Gong Sunbei recognized Dan Wong Kai and Viper, he would know that Wang Zicheng and the others were lying. Wang Zicheng and the others were now in the chief tower. They were his spies in the chief tower and could not be suspected by Gong Sunbei. It was also because he considered the safety of Wang Zicheng and the others that he did not bring Gong Sunbei into the castle, even though it was very dangerous. "Have we seen each other before?" Dan Wong Kai suddenly spoke, but his voice was hoarse. As he spoke, Dan Wong Kai turned his head to look at Gong Sunbei. However, when he saw Dan Wong Kai's current appearance, Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with a smile. It was an extremely old face, covered with dry wrinkles. He then looked at Viper. Viper also turned his head. His appearance had also changed. He was now a sickly middle-aged man. "You've changed your appearance so quickly. You guys are pretty smart." Qin Feiyong laughed secretly. "Of course. Adaptability is the strength of the Qinghai 10 heroes." Viper smiled proudly. Then, he looked at Gong Sunbei and asked suspiciously, "Are you sure we've met before?" Gong Sunbei glanced at the two of them and smiled bitterly. He clasped his hands and said, "I mistook you for someone else. Sorry." The two of them smiled inwardly, turned around, and continued to cultivate with their eyes closed. Qin Feiyong also turned his head to look at the situation in the canyon as he flew towards the end of the canyon. The canyon was not wide, but it was very long. It was like a giant python, winding and stretching to the end of the sky. About a few hundred breaths later, the castle crossed the canyon and finally came to the end. What entered the picture was still a sea of clouds. White clouds rolled, and fog lingered. It was like a fairyland. More than 10 miles ahead, above the sea of clouds, there was a behemoth floating. "What the hell is that? Is it an illusion?" Lu Zhang looked at the behemoth, dumbfounded. Qin Feiyong was also in disbelief. It was actually a city. The city was very big, about a few hundred miles in diameter. In the city, there were majestic buildings, wide streets, rolling mountains, and all kinds of birds and auspicious beasts flying above the city. It was like a continent floating in the void. Every brick, tile, grass, and tree was full of a mysterious color. What you see now is not an illusion. That city is the Mu family's nest. Gong Sunbei stared at the city, his eyes flashing coldly. "I didn't expect them to live in such a place." Qin Feiyong murmured. What was the difference between this place and fairyland? Clouds lingered, auspicious beasts flew. These people really knew how to enjoy life. Gong Sunbei said, "Although we found this place, there is still a problem." "What problem?" Qin Feiyong looked at him suspiciously. The Mu family set up an invisible barrier around the city. If you want to enter the city, you first have to find a way to pass through this barrier. Gong Sunbei said. "Divine barrier?" Qin Feiyong's heart skipped a beat as he glanced at the void in front of the city. "Haven't you been here before? You should know how to break this barrier, right?" Lu Zhang looked at Gong Sunbei. "Do you see that man?" Gong Sunbei pointed at the edge of the city. Qin Feiyong looked over and saw a 10-meter-tall stone pillar at the edge of the city. A black-haired old man in a green robe sat cross-legged at the top of the stone pillar, resting with his eyes closed. Gong Sunbei said, "His name is Mu Yuan, the first butler of the Mu family. He is responsible for guarding the barrier. Anyone who wants to enter the city has to go through him." "The first butler? Then isn't he an antique?" Lu Zheng said. "Yes. He has been here since the Mu family first came to the Forgotten Continent. Although he is only the butler of the Mu family, he has great prestige in the Mu family. Even the patriarchs of the family are very polite to him. Moreover, his cultivation is extremely terrifying. He is at the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. When I first snuck in here, he was the one who almost discovered me." Gong Sunbei said in a deep voice. "The peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. Then he is a difficult opponent," Qin Feiyong muttered. Suddenly, he turned his head to look at Gong Sunbei and said, "The Mu family is so heavily guarded. How did you manage to sneak in here? I am really curious." How did you do it? Why do you have to expose a secret that no one wants to talk about? Gong Sunbei laughed and said, I was rude. Qin Feiyong smiled apologetically. He turned his head to look at Mu Yuan on the screen. His eyes flickered. Suddenly, he turned his head to look at Viper and said with a smile, It seems that I need you to enter the city. Viper was stunned. He stood up and said, Young master, please tell me. Qin Feiyong said, Your cultivation is the same as Mu Xing and Mu Shang. You are all 3-star combat emperors. You can disguise yourself as one of them and sneak in. Okay. Viper nodded. He took an illusion pill and disguised himself as Mu Xing. Then, he found a set of clothes similar to Mu Xing's and put it on. This method won't work. However, at this moment, Gong Sunbei shook his head and said, Why? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. Because Mu Yuan is a very cautious person. Even if the chief tower lord came to visit the Mu family, or if the Mu family's people came back from running errands, they would first use the Heaven's Eye Stone to verify their identity. Gong Sunbei said. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but feel angry. There were 3 layers of illusions outside. Was there a need to be so cautious? It can be said that for the past 10,000 years, the Mu family's base has never been discovered. It is all because of this Mu Yuan. Gong Sunbei sighed. This is really a difficult problem. Qin Feiyong rubbed his forehead. If there was no divine force barrier, it wouldn't be a problem. He could easily sneak in. But now, even the ancient castle couldn't be used. What should he do? Lu Zheng's eyes flickered. He suddenly said, I think we can only take a risk now. What risk? Qin Feiyong and Gong Sunbei looked at him suspiciously. Lu Zhang pointed to Viper and said, He will use the identity of Mu Xing to tell Mu Yuan that Mu Dahui is missing. Qin Feiyong was stunned. He nodded and said, This method is feasible. Immediately, he looked at Viper and the others who were suspicious and said, Think about it. When Mu Yuan learns that Mu Dahui is missing, how will he react? Viper thought for a moment and said, He will definitely be shocked and immediately go to the top of the mountain to check. That's right. When such a thing happens, the first thing he will think of is to check the situation, not to verify your identity. And if he wants to go to the top of the mountain, he will first have to open the divine force barrier, and I can take the opportunity to control the ancient castle and sneak into the city. But this way, there will be a big problem. Qin Feiyong frowned. What problem? Viper asked. When we leave the city, it will be troublesome. And during the time we enter the city, you can't go with us. Because when Mu Yuan confirms that Mu Dahui is missing, he will definitely ask you about the situation. And if he can't find you, he will definitely be suspicious. So, this is a very dangerous thing for you. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice. Viper pondered for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, I'm not afraid. I believe that I can deal with it. Are you sure? Qin Feiyong frowned. Although Viper had not been with him as long as White-Eyed Wolf and Fatso, he had long regarded Viper as a family. Frankly speaking, he really did not want Viper to take the risk. I'm sure. Viper nodded. All right. Be careful. Also, I'll give you Chang Shui. It will definitely help you at a critical moment. After Qin Feiyong finished speaking, he took out Chang Shui and handed it to Viper. This? Viper was stunned. After following Qin Feiyong for so long, he naturally knew how important Chang Shui was to Qin Feiyong. Normally, he would never give it to anyone. But now, he was actually giving it to him? After regaining his senses, he quickly waved his hand and said, Young master, you can't do this. Chang Shui is the only thing your mother left for you. I'm afraid. But before he could finish, Qin Feiyong smiled and said, You're afraid that I'll lose it. Viper did not deny it. Since you're afraid, then live well. After we meet, you can personally return it to me. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, Viper was a little flattered. Since Qin Feiyong gave him Chang Shui, it proved that he trusted him 100%. However, Chang Shui was too important. He was afraid that he could not bear Qin Feiyong's trust. Take it. Don't dawdle. If I hadn't broken through to become a 4-star combat emperor, you wouldn't have a share. Dan Wangkai said disdainfully. Ever since the time rule in the ancient castle changed, Dan Wangkai and Viper had been cultivating. Hence, their cultivation had undergone a huge change. Phew! Viper glanced at Dan Wang Kai and took a deep breath. He knelt on one knee and received Chang Shui with both hands. He said solemnly, "Young master, don't worry. I will protect Chang Shui with my life." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Then, he drove the ancient castle back the way he came. Chapter 13:13. Soon, the castle arrived at the entrance of the canyon. "Be careful," Qin Feiyang warned again. Viper nodded and looked at Gong Sun Bei, asking, "Do you know what the Mu family's disciples call Mu Yuan and Mu Dahui?" "Uncle Yuan. Uncle Hui," Gong Sun Bei said. "Send me out." Viper looked at Qin Feiyang and said. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and Viper immediately appeared at the entrance of the canyon. Looking at the quiet canyon, Viper let out a long breath and turned into a stream of light, rushing into the canyon. Qin Feiyang also drove the castle and followed beside Viper, just in case. Chirp! Not long after entering the canyon, the bloody falcon suddenly rushed out and blocked in front of Viper. But when it saw Viper's face, it quickly retreated to the side. When it passed by the bloody falcon, Viper nodded at it in a friendly manner. Not long after, Viper panted as he rushed out of the canyon, heading straight for Mu Yuan. Whoosh! At the same time, Mu Yuan suddenly opened his eyes and two sharp lights burst out. But when he looked at Viper, the sharp light in his eyes quickly disappeared. "How is it? Did you find any valuable herbs? And Mu Shang? Why didn't he come back with you?" Mu Yuan asked with a smile. "Uncle Yuan, we'll talk about this later. Now I have a very important matter to report to you." Viper stopped outside the divine power enchantment and looked at Mu Yuan as he gasped for breath. Mu Yuan was slightly stunned and frowned. "What important matter is it that made you so anxious?" "Uncle Hui. Uncle Hui is missing," Viper exclaimed. "What?" Mu Yuan's face immediately changed and he stood up, saying, "What happened? Tell me." "Not long ago, Mu Shang and I were looking for herbs, but we suddenly heard the sound of fighting at the entrance. I hurried over to check and found that Uncle Hui was missing," Viper said. "Fighting?" Mu Yuan's eyes trembled and said, "Could it be that some fierce beast accidentally broke into the entrance?" "I don't know either. Anyway, I've searched the area near the entrance, but I didn't see any trace of Uncle Hui." Viper shook his head. Mu Yuan's face darkened. "Uncle Yuan, do you think something will happen to Uncle Hui?" Snake asked worriedly. Mu Yuan raised his head to look at Viper and said in a deep voice, "Don't panic, this old man will go and take a look personally." After saying that, he took out a golden badge from his chest and pressed it against the void of space. Wang! In the void in front of him, a golden light screen suddenly appeared. The golden token was embedded in the light screen, and a door of light appeared. Nah! Inside the castle, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He immediately drove the castle into the light gate. Mu Yuan also put away the token and walked out of the light door. It could be said that the castle and Mu Yuan had almost brushed past each other. After the light door closed, Mu Yuan looked at Viper and said, "Let's go." Viper glanced at the sky above the city as a glint flashed across his eyes. He then followed behind Mu Yuan and flew towards the entrance. "Please don't let anything happen to him." Qin Feiyang looked at Viper's back and muttered. He then drove the castle into the depths of the city. Inside the city, the streets and alleys were filled with people. Not all of them were cultivators here. There were many mortals. After all, the ingredients for the potential pill were too rare. It was impossible to take care of everyone. And the good resources were naturally given to those talented disciples. Qin Feiyang scanned the huge city and asked, "Brother Gong Sun, are you familiar with the situation in the city?" Gong Sun Bei shook his head. "Then it seems that I have to catch someone and ask." Qin Feiyang muttered as he drove the castle. As he sped along, he searched for a target. This target had to be someone who was timid and afraid of trouble, but at the same time, had a certain level of cultivation. Because ordinary mortals wouldn't know too much. A moment later, he drove the castle into a small alley. In the alley, there were more than 10 young men and women. They were surrounding a skinny black-clothed youth. That black-clothed youth had the strength of a 9-star battle king. As for the young men and women surrounding him, the weakest one was a 1-star battle emperor. One of the purple-clothed youth was about 20 years old. He looked at the black-clothed youth in an overbearing manner and shouted, "Mu Chen, I'll give you one more chance. Give me the white jade fruit immediately." White jade fruit. Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled as he looked at the black-clothed youth in the image. This person actually had the white jade fruit? As for the youth named Mu Chen, he looked at the purple-clothed youth and said, "I really don't have the white jade fruit. Can you believe me? You don't have it? Do you think we're fools? I saw with my own eyes that you found a white jade fruit tree in the training ground. And you, not only did you pluck all the white jade fruit, you even dug out the tree. If I'm not wrong, you should be planning to give the white jade fruit tree to the patriarch to receive a reward." Beside the purple-clothed youth, there was a white-clothed girl. She looked at Mu Chen with a cold smile. "You must be seeing things. During this period of time, I didn't even go to the training ground," Mu Chen hurriedly said, but he looked a little flustered. Obviously, he was lying. "Stubborn. Beat him up. I'll take responsibility for his death or disability," the purple-clothed youth roared. Hearing this, a few young men at the side immediately stepped forward and started to punch and kick Mu Chen. "Stop beating me. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you," Mu Chen wailed. "Stop." The purple-clothed youth waved his hand. "Trash. You should have handed it over earlier. Why did you have to force us to beat you?" The youths looked at Mu Chen with disdain and retreated to the side. One of them was even more outrageous. He even spat on Mu Chen's face. Mu Chen awkwardly got up. He glanced at the group of people and took out the Cosmos bag. "Give me the Cosmos bag." The purple-clothed youth stretched out his hand in front of Mu Chen. His attitude was very domineering. Mu Chen's face immediately turned pale. In the Cosmos bag, there were not only the white jade fruit tree and the white jade fruit tree, but also all his belongings. "Didn't you hear? Give it to me now," the purple-clothed youth shouted. Mu Chen's gaze trembled. He quickly handed the Cosmos bag to the purple-clothed youth with both hands. The purple-clothed youth smiled proudly. He grabbed the Cosmos bag and looked at Mu Chen with disdain. "You want to fight with me? You're really overestimating yourself. Continue to beat him. Let him know the price of angering me." As soon as he finished speaking, the youths next to him swarmed up and beat Mu Chen crazily. "You can't do this. I've already given you the Cosmos bag. What else do you want?" Mu Chen roared again and again. His face was distorted by the pain. The purple-clothed youth looked at him contemptuously and lowered his head to check the Cosmos bag. Soon, his eyes were full of greed. He looked at the white-clothed woman next to him and smiled. "The white jade fruit tree and the white jade fruit tree are really inside." Hearing this, the white-clothed woman immediately beamed with joy. Whoosh! However, at this moment, the group of people only saw a blur in front of them. The next moment, they were shocked to find that they had appeared in a strange stone room. "What's going on? Where is this? How did we get in?" The group of people turned pale with fright. Hearing the voices of the purple-clothed youth and the others, Mu Chen raised his head suspiciously. His face was suddenly full of surprise. "Welcome to my castle." A hearty laugh suddenly sounded from behind them. The group of people suddenly quivered and quickly turned around. They saw a white-clothed youth with his hands behind his back, looking at them with ridicule. "You are?" The purple-clothed youth looked at the white-clothed youth in surprise. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, his face suddenly changed and he said in surprise, "You're Qin Feiyang. It seems that I'm quite popular in your Mu family. Otherwise, not everyone would know me," Qin Feiyang said playfully. "It's really Qin Feiyang. Why are you here?" The group of people suddenly panicked. Mu Chen curled up in a ball and trembled. Why was he so unlucky today? First, his Cosmos bag was stolen. Now he met this fiend, Qin Feiyang. Who in the world didn't know of this lawless and terrifying existence? Who didn't know of it? Encountering him was equivalent to encountering the Grim Reaper. Qin Feiyang glanced at the group of people and then looked at Mu Chen. Finally, his eyes locked on the purple-clothed youth and he said, "You looked quite impressive just now." Plop! The purple-clothed youth's legs went soft. He directly knelt on the ground and begged, "Qin Dage, you and I have no enmity. Please don't kill me." The others also quickly knelt down in fear. He knelt down just like that? Humph! What a trash who bullies the weak and fears the strong. Lu Zheng despised. Isn't this the kind of person we're looking for? Qin Feiyong chuckled and looked at the purple-clothed youth and said, I can spare your life, but it depends on your performance. Speak. As long as I know, I will tell you everything I know without reserve. The purple-clothed youth nodded repeatedly. First, give me Mu Chen's Cosmos bag. Qin Feiyong said. Yes. The purple-clothed youth hurriedly handed it over. Qin Feiyong grabbed it in his hand and threw it to Dan Wangkai, saying, See if there are any white jade fruits. After Dan Wangkai caught the Cosmos bag, he immediately lowered his head to check. His eyes shone with green light. Soon, Dan Wangkai looked up at Qin Feiyong and nodded. There are 3 white jade fruits and a white jade fruit tree inside. Very good. Qin Feiyong smiled happily. Not only did he get a stalk of shenin grass and shenin grass, but he also got 3 white jade fruits. More importantly, there was a white jade fruit tree. With this white jade fruit tree, it meant that he would have an inexhaustible supply of white jade fruits in the future. This trip to the Mu family was really a big gain. Qin Feiyong looked down at the purple-clothed youth and said, Now answer me, how many false gods do you have? How many 9-star combat emperors? The purple-clothed youth's expression stiffened and he smiled bitterly. I'm just a 2-star combat emperor, how would I know these things? Qin Feiyong looked at the others. Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Qin Feiyong frowned and asked, Then where do your patriarch and your great ancestor live? I know this. Patriarch and great ancestor live in the sacred mountain. Chapter 13-14. Qin Feiyong asked, Where is the sacred mountain? 10 miles away from the south of the city, there is a mountain range. All the people above the war emperor are there. The purple-clothed youth said. Qin Feiyong controlled the ancient castle and flew above the city. With a wave of his hand, the image in front of him began to move. Soon, the image locked onto the south of the city. There was indeed a mountain range there. The mountain peaks towered into the clouds, imposing and majestic. And in the mountain stream, one could vaguely see a magnificent palace, exuding an ancient aura. Qin Feiyong glanced at the mountain range, then looked at the purple-clothed youth, and asked, Where is the training ground? The white jade fruit was found by Mu Chen in the training ground, which meant that there might be other treasures in the training ground. The training ground is outside the north of the city. It is a place for us ordinary disciples to train. The purple-clothed youth said. North of the city. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, and the image in the air began to move again, locking onto the north of the city. Outside the city, there was a dense forest, covering an area of more than 100 miles, with ancient trees towering into the sky. Qin Feiyong asked, Are there many treasures in the training ground? For example, treasures like the white jade fruit? The training ground is mainly to train our combat ability and cultivate combat awareness. There are not many treasures. But if you are lucky, you can encounter some. The purple-clothed youth said. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed and asked, Is there anyone guarding the training ground? No. The purple-clothed youth shook his head. In fact, thinking about it, not only was there a 3-layer illusion at the entrance, even the city was protected by a divine barrier. It was impossible for outsiders to sneak in, and the training ground was not an important place. Why would there be a need for experts to guard it? Qin Feiyong's mind became active. Wait. There were not many treasures in the training ground. If he specifically asked people to find them, it would be a waste of time. It would be better. Go directly to the Mu family's medicine field. The Mu family was isolated from the world and had mastered the alchemy scripture. They must have cultivated a medicine field. Moreover, after thousands of years of accumulation and precipitation, the Mu family's medicine field must be amazing. Where is your medicinal field? Qin Feiyong asked the purple-clothed youth. Herbal field? The purple-clothed youth was slightly taken aback. He shook his head and said, I really don't know about this. I only know that it is indeed a medicinal field. What's the point of keeping you if you don't know anything? With a wave of his hand, Lu Zheng sliced off the purple-clothed youth's neck, causing blood to gush out. Bang! The purple-clothed youth fell to the ground, dead. His eyes were filled with rage and fear before his death. Seeing this scene, the man called Mu Chen, the white-clothed woman and the others all turned deathly pale from fright. We really don't know where the herbal field is. Qindage, please spare us. If you really want to know, you can go to the sacred mountain to take a look. Because the herb field is most likely to be in the sacred mountain. The group of people were terrified. Sacred mountain. Qin Feiyong murmured as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He turned to Dan Wangkai and said, "Bring them to the ancient pagoda and finish them off." "All right." Dan Wangkai nodded his head. The group of people suddenly collapsed to the ground in despair. Two of them even peed in their pants. Ancient pagoda? Gong Sunbei's eyes were filled with suspicion. "Where is this place?" Mu Chen suddenly said, "Qindage, don't kill me. I know where the herbal field is. I can take you there." Qin Feiyong was stunned and turned to look at Mu Chen. Mu Chen said, "I don't dare lie to you. I really know." Qin Feiyong waved his hand. Dan Wangkai, the white-clothed woman, and the purple-clothed youth's corpse instantly disappeared from the ancient castle. Then, Qin Feiyong looked at Mu Chen and said, "Tell me, where is the herbal field?" Mu Chen said, "The herbal field is not in the sacred mountain. It is deep in the mountains east of the city." "How do you know?" Qin Feiyong frowned. This person was only a 9-star battle king. In the entire Mu clan, he belonged to the lowest class. How could he know the location of the herbal field? There must be something fishy going on. Mu Chen said, "I used to work as a waiter in a restaurant. I accidentally heard the young lord and a friend chatting. They happened to talk about the herbal field." "Young lord?" Qin Feiyong was stunned and asked, "Are you talking about Mu Qing?" "Yes, that's him." Mu Chen nodded, but when he mentioned Mu Qing, there was a trace of hatred in his eyes. However, Qin Feiyong was able to clearly sense that hatred. He suddenly showed a trace of curiosity and asked, "Is there any grudge between you and Mu Qing?" Mu Chen was stunned and said in surprise, "How do you know? Although you want to hide the hatred in your heart, you are still too young. When you mention Mu Qing, the hatred in your eyes can't be completely hidden." Qin Feiyong said lightly. Mu Chen's eyes trembled and bowed. Seeing is better than hearing. Qindage is really the #1 person among the younger generation. Mu Chen admires you. Qin Feiyong said, "Don't think that I will let you go just because you flatter me." Mu Chen said, "I don't ask Qindage to let me go. I only ask Qindage to do me a favor and kill Mu Qing. He is the young lord of your Mu clan. You want to kill him? Why is that?" Qin Feiyong was surprised. "Since I was young, my family was poor. In order to eat and wear, I had to work as a waiter in a restaurant. But once when I was walking, I accidentally bumped into him. Because of this, he actually destroyed my qi. And he even asked the restaurant owner to drive me out. I am the only child in my family. My parents put their hopes on me. Since I was young, in order to train me, they desperately went out to earn money. They even exchanged all the valuable things at home for elixirs for my cultivation. But because of an unintentional mistake, all of this went up in smoke. Of course, I was not convinced and went to the patriarch to reason with him." Mu Chen said angrily. "And the result?" Qin Feiyong asked. "In the end, not only did the patriarch not see me, he even asked someone to drive me out. Coincidentally, I met Mu Qing at the door. He knew that I went to the patriarch to reason with him, so he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He forced me to take the disaster elixir and turned me into a real cripple. The most outrageous thing was that he even spread the word that no one was allowed to give me the marrow-cleansing elixir." Mu Chen roared. His eyes were bloodshot. "Disaster elixir." Qin Feiyong was a little surprised. "Interesting," he said. "Continue." Later, when my parents learned about this, it was like a bolt from the blue. They were depressed all day. Not long after, they both died. I lost my cultivation and my parents. During that time, I drowned my sorrows in alcohol, feeling that there was no hope in life. In the end, I chose to kill myself. I went to the training ground because there were many fierce beasts there. For a cripple like me who had no cultivation, once I stepped into the training ground, it was like stepping into hell. But when I entered the training ground and was ready to die, a miracle happened. When Mu Chen said this, a bright light burst out from his eyes. "What miracle?" Lu Zhang was curious. I suddenly heard the sound of fighting nearby, so I curiously ran over to have a look. In the end, I found 2 3-star combat emperors fighting over a purple spirit flower. Mu Chen said. Purple spirit flower. Qin Feiyong was surprised. Not only was there the white jade fruit, but there was also the purple spirit flower. It seemed like the Mu family's nest was a big treasure. Lu Zheng glanced at Qin Feiyong, then looked at Mu Chen and said, "Let me guess what happened next." The 2 3-star combat emperors fought over the purple spirit flower, and in the end, you got the purple spirit flower. And you took the purple spirit flower and exchanged it with someone for a marrow cleansing pill. From then on, you started your cultivation journey again. Lu Zheng said. You guessed the first part correctly. They did die together, and I also got the purple spirit flower. But I also got their Quanquan pouches. And in their Quanquan pouches, there were a lot of qi gathering pills, body tempering pills, battle qi pills, 2 marrow cleansing pills, and 3 potential pills. At that time, I knew that the heavens didn't want me to die, so I immediately used the marrow cleansing pill to expel the poison of the spiritual disaster pill. Later, I used these pills to cultivate desperately, and now I have finally recovered the cultivation of a 9-star combat emperor. Mu Chen said. Qin Feiyong asked, what was your cultivation before you were crippled? 8-star combat emperor. Mu Chen said. Not bad. Qin Feiyong smiled in surprise and said, what about the purple spirit flower? With the purple spirit flower, he could prepare to refine the great creation pill. This was because he had the most important herbs, the fruit of fortune, white jade fruit, dark yin grass, and dark yang grass. He only lacked the purple spirit flower. As for the other herbs, they were already made. I gave the purple spirit flower to Mu Qing. Although Mu Qing and I have a deep hatred, I know that I can only be reborn by pleasing him. Mu Chen said. You're quite smart. As the young master of the Mu family, Mu Qing has a high position and power. Even if you got the marrow cleansing pill, he could force you to take the spiritual disaster pill again. Qin Feiyong said. Yes. When I gave him the purple spirit flower, he was very happy and never came to find trouble with me again. He even took care of me. On the surface, I also flattered him and said that I had forgotten my hatred, but secretly, I had been looking for opportunities. But I was too weak. In front of him, I couldn't find a chance at all. Mu Chen laughed at himself. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, I didn't expect this guy to have such a side. This is a little different from the Mu Qing I know. Speaking of which, during that time he was indeed different. In the past, he was very good and rarely got angry, but during that time, his temper was very bad, and he would fight without saying a word. Many of our clansmen have suffered losses at his hands, Qin Lai said. Mu Chen said. Qin Feiyong stared blankly and asked doubtfully, when? It seems to be. Mu Chen thought carefully and said, yes, it was the time when demon child ancestor died. Ah. Qin Feiyong was stunned, then shook his head and smiled, saying, I understand. Of course, he remembered demon child. At that time, in Yan Wei's tribe, he did evil and was finally killed by the mysterious madam. It was also at that time that Mu Qing began to have a murderous intent towards him. If there was no accident, it must be because of the death of demon child that Mu Qing's temperament changed greatly. So he made a big fuss over such a small matter and destroyed Mu Chen's cultivation. In other words, at that time, Mu Qing was purely venting his anger on Mu Chen. Chapter 13:15. Because, if he hadn't found the mysterious lady to kill the demon child, then Mu Qing wouldn't have vented his anger on Mu Chen. This was just to prove the old saying, I didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of me. It was just that Mu Chen was lucky and didn't die. Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered, and suddenly there was a flash of light in his eyes. He looked at Mu Chen and said, I can help you get revenge, but you have to pay the price. No matter what the price is, I'm willing to pay it. Mu Chen said without hesitation. Qin Feiyong said, become my shadow and kill all those who come to offend me. This person's life experience was somewhat similar to his, so he couldn't help but feel compassion. Mu Chen's face changed. Becoming Qin Feiyong's shadow was equivalent to becoming a killing blade in Qin Feiyong's hand. In this way, wouldn't he be an enemy of the Mu family? Although he hated Mu Qing, hated the patriarch, and hated those who had bullied him, the blood of the Mu family flowed in his body after all. It was still difficult for him to give up the Mu family. I won't force you. Think about it yourself. But I can tell you very clearly that if you don't agree, even if I don't kill you today, you will never have a chance to take revenge on Mu Qing. Qin Feiyong said lightly. Mu Chen asked cautiously, if I don't agree, you really won't kill me? You don't think I'm such a kind person, do you? Qin Feiyong laughed. Mu Chen looked flustered and said with a wry smile, then do I have a choice? No. Either die or become a sharp blade in my hand. Qin Feiyong said. Mu Chen lowered his head, and his face was uncertain. You should be honored. You see, there are so many people around Qin Feiyong. Who is qualified to be his shadow? No one. You're the first. Lu Zhang said with an evil smile. Mu Chen glanced at Lu Zhang, then looked at Qin Feiyong. Finally, he gritted his teeth and knelt on one knee, respectfully saying, Mu Chen greets the Lord. Qin Feiyong smiled. What could be more interesting than using a descendant of the Mu family to deal with Mu Tianyang? I don't like the surname Mu. From now on, you will change your surname to Qin. You will be called Qin Chen. Qin Feiyong formed a seal with both of his hands and an enslavement seal appeared. It entered Mu Chen's head and quickly took control of Mu Chen's soul. Mu. Qin Chen greets the Lord. Mu Chen said respectfully. That was not right. Now, they were already calling him Qin Chen. Qin Feiyong nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Wang Xiaojie. Wait for me here. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong said to Lu Zhang and Gong Sunbei. Then, he led Qin Chen and Wang Xiaojie into the ancient tower and descended above the village. Wang Xiaojie looked at the village and asked suspiciously, Master, what are you doing? Qin Chen, on the other hand, looked around suspiciously. What was this place? Qin Feiyong did not answer and said loudly, Elder Wang, come out and see me. Swoosh. Before his voice faded, Wang Yongfeng rushed out of the village like lightning and landed in front of Qin Feiyong. He bowed and said, Greetings, young master. Qin Feiyong pointed at Qin Chen and Wang Xiaojie and said with a smile, These two people, I will leave them to you now. And Wang Yongfeng looked at the two of them suspiciously and asked, Why are you leaving them to me? To train them. Just like how the Grand Valley Master and Grand Valley Master trained you. I want to see them reborn in the shortest time possible. Even if they know that they are going to die, they will not hesitate at all. Qin Feiyong said. This, Wang Xiaojie's expression changed. He grabbed Qin Feiyong's hand and said, Master, there is no need for this disciple to do this. Qin Feiyong said expressionlessly, It is because you are my disciple that I have to let you suffer more. Because I don't want to collect your corpse in the future. Wang Xiaojie immediately drooped his head, looking sullen. Qin Feiyong glanced at him and said to Wang Yongfeng, Torture them as much as you want. Don't show mercy. Wang Yongfeng shook his head and smiled. He cupped his hands and said, This old man obeys. Whoosh. At this time, Dan Wang Kai rushed out from the mountain stream below and came in front of Qin Feiyong. He looked at Wang Xiaojie and Qin Chen and asked in confusion, Why did you bring them here? Qin Feiyong did not answer and asked, Have you dealt with it? Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all. Dan Wang Kai nodded. Then let's go. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and brought Dan Wang Kai back to the castle. Qin Chen. Once a subject, always a subject. Little cousin, you are ambitious. As soon as he saw Qin Feiyong appear, Lu Zhang said meaningfully. Qin Feiyong was stunned and said suspiciously, What ambition can I have? Still pretending? What does this subject represent? It represents the subject. You changed Mu Chen's name to Qin Chen. Doesn't it show that you are still interested in the throne of the great Qin Empire? Lu Zhang joked. The corner of Qin Feiyong's mouth twitched. This guy's imagination was really rich. He had never thought about the throne of the great Qin Empire. And he changed Mu Chen's name to Qin Chen purely because the pronunciation of Chen was similar. He was too lazy to think about other names. However, he was too lazy to explain. Whoosh. He drove the castle and flew to the mountains east of the city. Mu Chen? Qin Chen. Dan Wang Kai heard the conversation between the two and was stunned. Then, he went to the side of the black dragon snake and whispered, When I left just now, did something happen? Boss Qin has recruited another subordinate. The black dragon snake secretly said. There are more and more people under the young master. You have to work hard. Otherwise, in the future, your status in front of the young master will be lower and lower. Dan Wangkai secretly laughed. Aren't you the same? The black dragon snake rolled his eyes. Me? Dan Wangkai was stunned and secretly laughed. I am different from you. Because I am an alchemist, I am only responsible for alchemy. Killing the enemy is your responsibility. After saying that, Dan Wangkai turned and walked to the front of the furnace and continued to refine pills. The black dragon snake and the other beasts looked at each other and felt great pressure. Qin Feiyong grew too fast. They really couldn't keep up with him. Not long after, the ancient castle flew out of the city and entered the mountains. Lu Zhang looked at the scene in front of him and frowned. You don't want to rob the medicine field now, do you? Of course not now. Going to the medicine field now is just to find out the situation first. When we leave, we can find an opportunity to make a move. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Zhang said, I think the medicine field is such an important place. There must be someone guarding it. Maybe there is even a fake god. A fake god is not invulnerable. We can always find an opportunity. Qin Feiyong smiled confidently. Listening to the calm conversation between the two, Gong Sunbei's heart was surging. These two brats are too scary. They didn't even let go of the Mu family's medicine field. The ancient castle moved as fast as lightning. About 500 to 600 breaths passed. Finally, in the scene in front of them, a vast plain appeared. The plain was vast and boundless. And on the plain, the medicinal herbs swayed in the wind, exuding a hazy glow. Qin Feiyong was extremely excited. Lu Zheng's face was also filled with excitement. And Dan Wangkai was so excited that he almost couldn't breathe. At a glance, it was all medicinal herbs. It was impossible to count them. Moreover, most of the medicinal herbs seen so far were 10,000 years old. However, the medicinal herbs on the periphery of the medicine field were basically some ordinary medicinal herbs. Qin Feiyong drove the ancient castle and flew into the depths of the medicine field. And as they went deeper, such as blood ginseng, fire ginseng, 9 suns flower, dragon saliva fruit, red fireglass pill, these more precious medicinal herbs also entered their sight one by one. Unknowingly, they had already gone dozens of miles into the medicine field. Suddenly, Dan Wangkai's eyes widened, staring at a certain place in the picture, and said in surprise, No way, is that the Tree of Fortune? Ha! Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang looked along, and their faces were full of disbelief. In the picture, there was a big tree more than 10 meters tall. The trunk of the big tree was as thick as 2 buckets, and it was dark all over. There were 3 thick branches on it, and each leaf on the branches was as big as a cattail leaf fan, emitting a hazy black light. It looked exactly the same as the Tree of Fortune. Zoom in! Dan Wangkai shouted. Qin Feiyong quivered and came back to his senses. With a wave of his hand, the picture kept zooming in. When it finally stopped, everyone could see clearly, and even the lines on the tree could be seen clearly. What else could it be but the Tree of Fortune? And on the 3 branches, there were more than 3 fruits of fortune. 5, 15, 30. Oh my God, there are a total of 30 fruits of fortune. Dan Wangkai stared at the Tree of Fortune, and the greed and desire in his eyes were undisguised. For him, nothing was more important than medicinal herbs, especially such rare treasures of heaven and earth. Young master, I beg you, you must get it, you must. He suddenly turned his head to look at Qin Feiyong. His hands were clenched tightly together, and his breathing was rapid as he enunciated each word. I will. Qin Feiyong nodded. Putting aside the value of the fruits of fortune, this Tree of Fortune was more than 10 times bigger than the one in the ancient pagoda. One could imagine how terrifying the energy emitted by this Tree of Fortune was. If it could be transplanted to the ancient pagoda, the villagers would benefit even more. Because the energy emitted by the Tree of Fortune could change a person's physique and talent. Wait! Look at the back of the Tree of Fortune. There seems to be a person? Lu Zhang frowned. A person? Qin Feiyong was slightly taken aback. He looked over and seemed to be able to see the silhouette of a person, but because the Tree of Fortune was too thick, he could not see everything. He steered the ancient castle toward the other side of the Tree of Fortune. As expected, an old man sat cross-legged under the Tree of Fortune. He was wearing a snow-white robe. His body was hunched, and his hair was white. However, he wore a mask on his face, so his true appearance could not be seen. His aura was as unfathomable as the ocean. It's him. Gong Sunbei's expression changed. Who? Is he very strong? Lu Zheng was surprised. Qin Feiyang's expression also darkened. Very strong. It is said that he has stepped into the peak of the false god realm. He was no stranger to this white-robed old man, because this was the person who had chased him to the glacier forest. And the snow python had snatched the real space-time gate from this person. Chapter 13:16. The Peak of the False God Realm. Lu Zheng was dumbfounded. Didn't this mean that this person was only one step away from stepping into the true war god realm? Gong Sunbei shook his head and smiled. With him here, it's impossible for you to rob the herb field. There's nothing impossible in this world. Qin Feiyang murmured. There's a purple spirit flower. Dan Wangkai suddenly roared again. He was so excited that his hands and feet were dancing. Calm down. Calm down. Qin Feiyang patted Dan Wangkai's shoulder. There were indeed many precious herbs around the Tree of Fortune. For example, the various herbs of the Great Creation Pill and the various herbs of the Spirit Congealing Pill, however. Most of the herbs were ranked at the bottom. There were not many rare herbs like the purple spirit flower and the spiritual infant fruit that were ranked at the top. But even so, it was still very shocking. Let's go to the sacred mountain. Qin Feiyang glanced at the old man in the white robe, then drove the castle back the way it came and rushed towards the south of the city. The most important thing now was to figure out the Mu family's background. As long as he figured out this, he could make a plan to rob the herb field. The sacred mountain. The mountain range was majestic and magnificent. On top of a certain mountain, there was a huge palace. The palace was more than 100 feet high, golden and magnificent, extraordinary. At this moment, in the main hall, a middle-aged man was squatting on the throne, wearing a purple and gold robe. His eyebrows were like swords, and he was majestic without being angry. This person was Mu Qing's father, the head of the Mu family. Below, Mu Yuan and Viper stood respectfully. The head of the Mu family glanced at the two and finally looked at Mu Yuan. He said in a deep voice, "Are you sure Mu Dahue is missing?" This old man went to check it personally. It's absolutely true. Moreover, this old man has investigated the area within a few hundred miles outside the entrance and finally found traces of a battle in a valley. I think not only Mu Dahue, but also Mu Shang is probably dead. Mu Yuan said. Who dares to touch the Mu family? The head of the Mu family was furious. Patriarch, please calm down. Right now, the first thing we need to investigate is, did this perpetrator accidentally barge into the Fire Phoenix mountain range, or did he deliberately come here? Mu Yuan said. What do you mean? The Mu Jia's lord frowns. If it's unintentional, then it's fine. However, if it's deliberate, it means that someone wants to harm our Mu family. Furthermore, this person knows our Mu family like the back of his hand. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to find our Mu family's entrance. Mu Yuan said. The Mu Jia lord's heart sank. Then, in your opinion, is this person unintentional or deliberate? This old man doesn't dare to speak carelessly. But so far, this old man has yet to discover anyone infiltrating this place. Mu Yuan shook his head. The Mu Jia's lord raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Viper. Mu Xing, tell me the details of the situation at that time. Yes. Viper replied respectfully. Then, he used his silver tongue to weave an incomparably realistic story. And then there was Qin Feiyang. At this moment, he was already in the air above the sacred mountain. The sacred mountain was huge. The mountains rose and fell, and the rivers surged. There were also many ferocious beasts in the mountain streams. Among them, there were 10 giant peaks that were particularly eye-catching. The 10 giant peaks were like 2 giant hands, standing in the middle of the sacred mountain. The lowest one was 50 to 60,000 feet high, and it was magnificent. And on top of the 10 giant peaks, Qin Feiyang could sense countless powerful auras. These auras were not the auras of ferocious beasts, but the auras of humans. And without exception, all of them were the auras of combat emperors. From 1-star combat emperors to 7-star combat emperors. At the top of each of the 10 mountains, there was an ancient stone tower. These 10 stone towers had 10 floors, and they were completely black. There was no sense of luxury, but they were like 10 ancient giant beasts lying on top of the mountain, giving people a heart-palpitating aura. Lu Zhang glanced at the 10 stone towers and frowned. They don't look like divine weapons. Gong Sunbei. Do you know what's inside the 10 stone towers? Gong Sunbei shook his head. The 10 giant peaks can only sense the auras of 1-star combat emperors and 7-star combat emperors. Then where are the Mu family's 8-star combat emperors, 9-star combat emperors, and false gods? Lu Zheng frowned. Suddenly, his body shook, and he looked at the 10 stone towers again. He said in surprise, "They can't be inside, right?" "It's possible," Qin Feiyang thought. Lu Zheng said, "Let's go and take a look." Qin Feiyang controlled the ancient castle, cut through the sky, and landed in front of one of the ancient towers. There were no carvings or patterns on the ancient tower, and it was very simple. The tower door was closed, and there was no one guarding in front of it. There was not even a shadow nearby, and it was very quiet. "I'll go out and take a look." Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered, and he suddenly said, "Don't." Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Lu Zheng and Gong Sunbei quickly grabbed him. One had to know. This was the Mu family's sacred mountain. All the experts of the Mu family were here. What if they were discovered? At that time, they were afraid that the saying would come true, and even the heavens would not be able to save them. Lu Zhang thought for a moment and suggested, "Let the Spirit Snake Emperor go out. It can be invisible, so it's relatively safe." Qin Feiyang turned to look at the Spirit Snake Emperor. But the Spirit Snake Emperor pretended not to hear. What a joke. Only a fool would go for such a dangerous thing. Ahem. Qin Feiyang of course knew that the Spirit Snake Emperor was pretending. He clenched his fist, put it to his mouth and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I will come to your rescue." The Spirit Snake Emperor opened its eyes and said angrily, "Why do I have to go every time there is such a dangerous thing? It can't be helped. Who asked you to be so strong? Only you can do it." Qin Feiyang laughed. The Spirit Snake Emperor said angrily, "So according to you, being strong is also a kind of fault?" No, no, no. Being strong means that you are powerful. Capable people do more work. Don't worry, I will be here to help you at any time. I guarantee that you will not be hurt. Qin Feiyang said solemnly. My head hurts. The Spirit Snake Emperor shook its head and got up reluctantly. It rolled its eyes at Qin Feiyang and said, "Send me out." Thanks. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the Spirit Snake Emperor immediately appeared in front of the pagoda door. The color of its skin changed immediately, and it merged with the ground in an instant. Lu Zhang was amazed and said enviously, "How good would it be if I had such an ability? Then you should quickly go and report to the underworld. When you reincarnate, give the King of Hell some benefits. He will definitely satisfy you." Wolf King joked. Get lost. Lu Zheng's face darkened. Wasn't this cursing him to die early? Then, he looked at the Spirit Snake Emperor. It slowly approached the door of the pagoda, then raised its tail and tried to push the door. However, just as the Spirit Snake Emperor's tail touched the door, the entire stone pagoda buzzed and a black light screen appeared. It seemed to have triggered some kind of mechanism. Not only was the Spirit Snake Emperor shocked, but Qin Feiyang and the others in the castle were also shocked. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hand and prepared to help the Spirit Snake Emperor. However, Lu Zhang suddenly stopped him and said in a low voice, "We can't let it in now. If someone appears later and finds that there is no one here, they will definitely be suspicious." That's true. Qin Feiyang muttered and said to the Spirit Snake Emperor telepathically, "Quickly change your appearance and pretend to be a beast here and escape down the mountain." Fuck. Didn't you say that you would help me? The Spirit Snake Emperor was furious, but it did not dare to hesitate. It immediately changed the color of its skin and turned into a half-meter-long green snake and rushed to the edge of the cliff. Right at this moment, the door of the pagoda opened and a burly middle-aged man strode out. His aura had reached the level of a 9-star combat emperor. His eyes were sharp as he scanned the area in front of him and quickly found the Spirit Snake Emperor. The Spirit Snake Emperor had just reached the edge of the cliff. Damn beast, how dare you come here and cause trouble? The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with killing intent. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang's face changed and he quickly controlled the castle to fly toward the Spirit Snake Emperor. At the same time, sensing the middle-aged man's terrifying aura, the spirit serpent emperor hurriedly leaped into the underbrush below the cliff and disappeared. What happened? Just as the middle-aged man was about to chase after the spirit snake emperor, another old man walked out of the pagoda. This old man had a hunched back and his long hair was messy. He was wearing an old yellow robe and there was no aura around him. He looked inconspicuous. However, when he looked at the old man, the middle-aged man, who was a 9-star combat emperor, had a respectful expression. A green snake just came in. It must have touched the door and caused the stone pagoda to sound the alarm. The middle-aged man said. The old man nodded and waved his hand. It's just a beast, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Yes. The middle-aged man nodded. Whoosh. At this moment, the Mu family head and Mu Yuan arrived in front of the stone pagoda. The Mu family head glanced at the stone pagoda in surprise and asked, "Why did the stone pagoda react?" "Nothing. It's just a blind beast that came to cause trouble and now it has been scared away," the old man said with a smile. The Mu family head and the middle-aged man were relieved. "What's wrong? Why do you look so nervous?" The old man and the middle-aged man looked at the two in confusion. The Mu family head sighed. "Not long ago something big happened at our entrance, so now I'm very uneasy." "What's the big deal?" The old man frowned. The Mu family head said, "Mu Dahui and a child named Mu Shang, who were guarding the entrance, met with an accident not long ago." "What?" The old man's face changed and said, "Tell me clearly." The Mu Jia's lord briefly explained the matter. "They actually hurt my Mu family's people. They're simply courting death." The old man was furious. He asked, "Did you find the culprit?" "No." The Mu family head shook his head. The old man shouted, "Then quickly send someone to investigate. And you, Mu Yuan, be sure to keep an eye on the barrier. If you find anyone suspicious, don't say anything. Kill them first and report later." His tone was full of murderous intent. "Yes." Mu Yuan bowed and replied. "Then go quickly, especially the main pagoda, focus on investigating. Because in the entire Forgotten Continent, only the people in the main pagoda know the address of the Mu family." Chapter 13:17. Good. Mu Jia's lord nodded and turned away. But suddenly he seemed to think of something. He turned to look at the old man and frowned. 8 days ago, Qin Feiyang entered the Central Divine Kingdom. Could this matter have something to do with him? "What did you say? Qin Feiyang is back?" The old man looked at him in surprise. "Yes." At that time in the Pill Tower Square, many people saw it with their own eyes. Mu Jia's lord said. "Then where is he now?" The old man asked. "As soon as he entered the Central Divine Kingdom, he never appeared again. Now no one knows where he is." Mu Jia's lord said. "Why did this little beast suddenly return to the Forgotten Continent?" The old man lowered his head. His brows were tightly knitted. There was an indescribable irritation in his heart. If Qin Feiyang didn't come back, then this matter would be easy to investigate. But Qin Feiyang's return made the whole thing complicated. "That's right." The old man suddenly thought of something. He looked up at the Mu Jia's lord and asked, "Did you find Qing'er?" "No." Mu Jia's lord shook his head. "Then what have you been doing all this time? Why can't you find a living person?" The old man was furious and fiercely reprimanded. Mu Jia's lord bowed his head. He didn't dare to refute. "And you?" The old man looked at Mu Yuan again and said angrily, "When Qing'er left, why didn't you ask clearly and then open the divine barrier and let him go? Do you know how important Qing'er is to our Mu Jia? Like this time. If Qing'er was here, even if Qin Feiyang hid at the end of the world, we would still be able to find him with the divine eye. We wouldn't be so passive." The old man was very angry. The two didn't dare to say a word. It seems that the old man's prestige in the Mu Jia is very high. The old man said in a deep voice, "I'm telling you, no matter what price you have to pay, you must find Qing'er for me, otherwise, I will hold you responsible. Get out." The two's body trembled. They quickly turned around and left. Trash. Looking at the backs of the two people, the old man snorted with dissatisfaction. The middle-aged man next to him retracted his gaze and comforted him. "Old Hai, don't worry. Although Qing'er is young, she's smart. There shouldn't be any accidents." "I hope so." The old man sighed. Back then, in order to investigate the whereabouts of Ran Duxing, Qin Feiyong entered the Forgotten Continent. In order to take revenge, Mu Qing used her all-seeing eye at all times to predict Qin Feiyong's location. As such, when Qin Feiyong had entered the Forgotten Continent, Mu Qing had immediately predicted his arrival and immediately headed to the glacier forest. At that time, the gate of time and space was robbed, and the second grandmaster of the Mu clan was killed. This caused him to almost lose his mind. Therefore, when he left, he did not tell anyone that he was going to find Qin Feiyong. Therefore, now, the Mu family only knew that Mu Qing was missing. They didn't know that Mu Qing had fallen into the hands of Qin Feiyong. They also didn't know that Mu Qing was now by Lu Xingchen's side. In fact, they had also suspected that Mu Qing had gone to the Great Qin Empire to find Qin Feiyong for revenge. After all, when they were fighting for the Divine Crystal, Qin Feiyong had caused their Mu family to suffer heavy losses. Mu Qing definitely couldn't take this lying down. But there was nothing they could do. The gate of time and space was stolen. The teleportation altar was guarded by the snow python. They couldn't send anyone to the Great Qin Empire to investigate. So until today, the Mu family was still searching for Mu Qing everywhere in the Forgotten Continent. They were even wondering if Mu Qing had met with misfortune. Otherwise, why hadn't she returned for so long? At the same time, Qin Feiyong also found the spirit snake emperor in the underbrush at the bottom of the cliff and brought it into the castle. What are you doing? Do you know that I almost died? As soon as it entered the castle, the spirit snake emperor roared in dissatisfaction. Aren't we fine? Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. That's because I was lucky. The spirit snake emperor snorted. Qin Feiyong said helplessly, We've known each other for so long. Don't you trust me? If your life was really in danger, I wouldn't leave you alone even if I had to expose my whereabouts. Who knows what's in a person's heart? The spirit snake emperor snorted and lay on the ground, closing its eyes and meditating. It would never do such a dangerous thing again. Qin Feiyong smiled helplessly. He controlled the castle and flew to the top of the mountain. Immediately, he saw Old Hai and the middle-aged man entering the stone tower. The door of the tower slowly closed. However, it wasn't completely closed. Lu Zheng asked, This is a good opportunity. Do you want to go in? Gong Sunbei said, But if you go in, it'll be difficult to come out. Think carefully. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go in. Qin Feiyong gritted his teeth and controlled the castle. At the last moment before the door closed, he flew into the stone tower. What entered his vision was a staircase that led to the top floor. Beside the staircase, there was a wide corridor. The floor was covered with gray stone tiles, clean and bright. On both sides of the corridor, there was a closed stone door every 10 meters. Just inside the stone door, Qin Feiyong and the others could clearly feel a terrifying aura. 8-star combat emperors. Obviously. Behind the stone door, there were many cultivation rooms. Lu Zhang said in a low voice, The Mu family's 8-star combat emperors are indeed all cultivating in the stone tower. Qin Feiyong controlled the castle and flew down the corridor. Gradually, his expression turned solemn. Because the first floor of the stone tower had 50 cultivation rooms. Moreover, there were people in each cultivation room. In other words, just the first floor alone had 58-star combat emperors. He controlled the castle and returned to the front door, flying towards the second floor. The second floor also had 50 cultivation rooms and 58-star combat emperors. The third floor. The fourth floor. The fifth floor. The sixth and seventh floors were the same. In other words, there were a total of 358-star combat emperors on the seventh floor. Gong Sunbei's expression became extremely serious. Next, Qin Feiyong flew to the 8th and 9th floor. These two floors were even more shocking. There were also 50 cultivation rooms, but the aura that came out from them were all 9-star combat emperors. This is too scary. Dan Wangkai muttered to himself. One had to know. Now, aside from the 9-star combat emperors, there were only 18 9-star combat emperors around Qin Feiyong. And here, just in this stone tower alone, there were 100 9-star combat emperors, not to mention the 9 stone towers outside. There was no comparison at all. The Mu family's foundation was too scary. Phew! Qin Feiyong's heart trembled. He let out a long breath and controlled the castle to fly to the 10th floor. Elder Hai's cultivation room was on the 10th floor. But when they entered the 10th floor, Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. There were 50 cultivation rooms here, but they couldn't sense any aura. If they hadn't seen Elder Hai enter one of the cultivation rooms with their own eyes, they would have thought that there was no one here. No! Lu Zhang suddenly thought of something and his body trembled. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang and Gong Sunbei looked at him in surprise. Lu Zhang said, there are people in these 50 cultivation rooms, but their auras have all disappeared. We can't sense them. What does this mean? Gong Sunbei said. I understand. Qin Feiyang suddenly spoke, his eyes flashing. What do you understand? Gong Sunbei looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, the people in these 50 cultivation rooms have reached the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. That's right. Their goal now is to become a god. So now, they must be comprehending the ultimacy of becoming a god. Although I don't understand what's going on, when the elders in my clan are comprehending the ultimacy of becoming a god, their auras will all disappear. Lu Zhang said in a deep voice. Now that you've reminded me, I remember it too. The experts in my main pagoda who have reached the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm also don't have any aura when they cultivate. So they're comprehending the ultimacy of becoming a god. Gong Sunbei said in realization. That's not the point. The point is, there are 358-star combat emperors, 109-star combat emperors, and 50 peak 9-star combat emperors in this stone pagoda. Do you know how terrifying this force is? They can destroy a super tribe with a wave of their hand. Lu Zheng roared. Hearing Lu Zheng's words, both Gong Sunbei and Qin Feiyang fell silent. No one would have thought that the Mu family's foundation was so terrifying. It was so terrifying that it made people despair. Don't forget, there are still 9 stone pagodas outside. If the situation in the 9 stone pagodas is the same as here, then I'll tell you that no one can shake the Mu family. Lu Zheng shook his head and sneered. Qin Feiyang and Gong Sunbei looked at each other and felt bitter. If the other 9 stone pagodas were the same as here, then the peak 9-star combat emperors would be the same as the 8-star combat emperors and 9-star combat emperors. 10 ancient pagodas meant there were 500 of them. 500 super experts. This was not something they could handle at all. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and asked, Brother Gong Sun, how is the main pagoda's foundation now? Gong Sunbei smiled bitterly. The main pagoda doesn't have the potential pill, so it's definitely not as good as the Mu family. What about the specifics? Qin Feiyang asked. It's not convenient to disclose the specifics. I can only tell you that our main pagoda is not even 1/5 of the Mu family's. Gong Sunbei sighed. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. After thousands of years of cultivation, the Mu family had grown to a point where no one could catch up to them. Gong Sunbei asked, what about the Great Qin Empire? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Lu Zhang said, the Great Qin Empire's foundation is similar to the main pagodas. If we really want to go to war with the Mu family, 3 forces must join forces. Which 3 forces? Qin Feiyang and Gong Sunbei looked at him suspiciously. Lu Zhang said, the main pagoda, the Great Qin Empire, and my Lu family. That's impossible. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Lu Zhang said, when it comes to a matter of life and death, nothing is impossible. That's not right. Your Lu family has also cultivated for thousands of years, and you also have the potential pill. Why can't you compare to the Mu family? Qin Feiyang frowned. Because my Lu family has no ambition. For generations, we just want to live a peaceful life. Otherwise, the Great Qin Empire would have changed its name. Chapter 13:18. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Changing his name? As long as he was here, no one would be able to take away the empire left by his ancestors, unless they stepped over his dead body. Wait. We only saw battle emperors, not false gods. Are the only false gods of the Mu family the white-robed old man and Yigleo? Gong Sunbei was shocked. Definitely more than that. Lu Zhang shook his head. The Mu family had been cultivating here for tens of thousands of years and had given birth to so many peak 9-star battle emperors. How could they only have 2 false gods? Either these fake divinities were hiding in the other 9 stone towers, or they were hiding somewhere else. In this world, the most important thing is still the false gods. Because any false god is enough to kill all the 9-star battle emperors of the Mu family. So we have to find out how many false gods the Mu family has. Qin Feiyong said solemnly. Actually, we don't have to worry too much. Because even if the Mu family is a few times more powerful than the main tower still has the capital to fight against them. Gong Sunbei said. What capital? Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang looked at him in shock. I can't tell you. Gong Sunbei smiled mysteriously and said, I believe that the Great Qin Empire also has the capital to fight against the Mu family. I don't know. I only know that the Great Qin Empire has 4 false gods, including the national teacher. Qin Feiyong said. 4 false gods. Gong Sunbei murmured and smiled. I think it's more than that. Maybe the Great Qin Empire has something that the Mu family is afraid of. Otherwise, the Mu family would have done something. Makes sense. Qin Feiyong nodded thoughtfully. Lu Zhang said, We're almost done here. Let's go out first and find a way to check the other towers. Qin Feiyong let out a long breath and controlled the ancient castle to fly to the first floor. Soon, the ancient castle arrived in front of the tower. Lu Zhang looked at the pagoda door and frowned. There should be a mechanism on this door. Let's go out and look for it. Did the sun rise from the west? You actually volunteered to go out and risk your life? Qin Feiyong looked at him in surprise. Lu Zhang pointed at his nose in astonishment. I'm going to have a whole new level of respect for you. Qin Feiyong gave him a thumbs up and chuckled. With a wave of his hand, he sent Lu Zhang out. Bastard! Which ear did you hear that I volunteered to come out? I'm calling for the Spirit Snake Emperor to come out. Lu Zhang was so angry that his nose was crooked. Although he was angry, he did not slack off. He vigilantly glanced at the cultivation room behind him and began to search carefully. However, he checked all around the tower door, but didn't find any mechanism. Try and see if you can push it away. Qin Feiyong's voice sounded in his mind. It's not like you didn't see the situation when the Spirit Snake Emperor touched the pagoda door. Now you want me to push it away. Do you want me to die? Lu Zhang said angrily in secret. That's outside. And inside, there's usually no trigger mechanism like that. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows and stared at the pagoda door. Finally, he raised his arm and carefully leaned toward the pagoda door. Who are you? But suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Lu Zhang and Qin Feiyong in the ancient castle were shocked at the same time. They saw a middle-aged man standing at the staircase on the second floor. He was thin and wore a long black robe. His aura had reached the level of a 9-star war emperor. Why am I so unlucky? Lu Zhang complained in his heart. He braced himself and turned to look at the middle-aged man in black. He bowed and said, Junior Mu Yizheng greets Senior. Mu Yizheng? The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows. Inside the castle, Qin Feiyong's face was also filled with shock. But soon he understood. It turned out that Lu Zhang wanted to pretend to be a disciple of the Mu family and get away with it. After all, there were many people in the Mu family. This middle-aged man might not have seen everyone. But will it work? Qin Feiyong couldn't help but worry. The middle-aged man looked at Lu Zhang and asked, Only those above the level of an 8-star war emperor can enter this place. Why are you here? Lu Zhang's mind was running fast. Suddenly, he had an idea. He cupped his hands and said, Old Hai asked me to come. This guy is quite smart. Qin Feiyong shook his head in amusement. Although he didn't know Old Hai's identity, it wasn't difficult to see that Old Hai must be highly respected in the Mu family from the attitude of the Mu family's patriarch and Mu Yuan. With Old Hai as a backer, he might be able to get away with it. Old Hai. Sure enough. Hearing the 2 words Old Hai, the middle-aged man was very surprised and asked, Why did Old Hai ask you to come here? Lu Zhang hesitated and said awkwardly, Senior, it's really inconvenient to say more about this matter. I hope you can forgive me. If you really want to know, you can ask Old Hai yourself. Then forget it. The middle-aged man waved his hand and seemed to be quite afraid of Old Hai. Seeing the change in the middle-aged man's attitude, Lu Zhang was secretly relieved and then asked, Senior, are you going out too? I'm going to the medicine field to find a few herbs. The middle-aged man smiled and walked down the stairs. Senior, Please go ahead. Lu Zheng's eyes lit up and respectfully retreated to the side, showing a very polite look. In fact, he wanted the middle-aged man to help him open the tower door. Quite a good little guy. The middle-aged man didn't think much about it. Instead, he praised Lu Zheng's performance and then took out a silver token from his arms. Lu Zheng stared at the token and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Immediately after, the middle-aged man grabbed the token and the battle chi in his palm surged into the token. Bas! The next moment, a brilliant silver beam swept out from the token and merged into the tower door. At that moment, the tower door opened quickly. It turns out that the token is the key to opening the tower door. Lu Zheng muttered secretly, a trace of light flashing in the depths of his eyes. When the tower door opened, the middle-aged man put away the token and strode out. Lu Zheng hurriedly followed him out. Smelling the fresh air outside, his suspended heart finally settled down. Immediately, he looked at the middle-aged man's back and a trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. The middle-aged man turned to look at Lu Zheng and asked with a smile, "Can you tell me, what is your relationship with Old Hai?" Lu Zheng was about to speak, but suddenly, he felt a mysterious force enveloping him. The next moment, he disappeared into thin air in front of the tower, and the middle-aged man also disappeared with Lu Zheng. At the same time, Lu Zheng and the middle-aged man appeared in the sky above a mountain range at the same time. "This is..." The middle-aged man glanced below, his eyes full of surprise. Lu Zheng also looked around suspiciously, but found everything in front of him very familiar. Soon, he smiled, because this was the ancient tower. Since he and the middle-aged man appeared in the ancient tower, it meant that Qin Feiyong must be here too. He glanced at the mountain range below and the surrounding void, then looked up. As expected, Qin Feiyong was standing above the two of them. Lu Zheng grinned and said, "It seems that we have the same idea. Otherwise, how can we be cousins?" Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "Who are you talking to?" The middle-aged man looked at Lu Zheng in surprise. "See for yourself." Lu Zheng pointed up. The middle-aged man looked up and immediately changed color. How could it be Qin Feiyong? The next moment, he glared at Lu Zheng and roared, "You actually colluded with Qin Feiyong." Whoosh! Lu Zheng smiled disdainfully, flew into the sky, and landed beside Qin Feiyong. He looked down at the middle-aged man and joked, "You don't really think that my name is Qin Feiyong and that I'm from your Mu family, do you?" The middle-aged man was stunned and immediately realized that he had been fooled. He said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" This young master will never change his name or his surname. "I am Lu Zheng," Lu Zheng said proudly. Lu Zheng, surnamed Lu, together with Qin Feiyong again. Still cousins. Could it be? The middle-aged man muttered to himself. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something, and his body trembled. "You're from the great Qin Empire's Lu family?" Lu Zheng said playfully, "It seems that my Lu family has not been forgotten by your Mu family." "How could this be?" The middle-aged man looked incredulous. "Why are you in my Mu family? How did you pass through the divine power barrier?" Qin Feiyong said, "This question when you go to hell, someone will tell you." "Haha." The middle-aged man looked up and laughed. "What are you laughing at?" Qin Feiyong looked at him coldly. "I'm laughing at your naivety. With your insignificant cultivation, you want to kill me?" The middle-aged man laughed wildly. The aura of a 9-star combat emperor erupted like a volcano and rushed toward Qin Feiyong. "Is a 9-star combat emperor very strong?" Qin Feiyong smiled coldly and shouted, "All of you come out!" Roar! Before his voice died away, below the mountain stream, the roars of beasts were deafening. The middle-aged man hurriedly looked down and saw many ferocious beasts, carrying monstrous ferocity, rushing into the sky and surrounding him. The middle-aged man's body could not help but tremble. His face was full of horror. There were so many emperor beasts, and all of them were 9-star emperor beasts, a total of 80 to 90. Seahorses and seals were also among them. Lu Zheng sneered and said, "Now tell me, are you naive or are we naive? Why does he have so many 9-star emperor beasts around him?" The middle-aged man shook his head crazily, unable to accept this terrible fact. Your Mu family has been in contact with me for so long. Don't you know that I, Qin Feiyong, never do things that I'm not sure of? Since I dared to come to your Mu family, then I've never been afraid of anyone. Cripple him. Qin Feiyong's eyes surged with murderous intent as he shouted. Brothers, go. Seahorses roared. A group of 9-star emperor beasts suddenly rushed toward the middle-aged man like hungry wolves pouncing on their prey. Little bastards, I'll perish together with you. The middle-aged man roared. His body filled with a destructive aura. Obviously. He wanted to self-destruct. He had no choice. Facing 80 to 99-star emperor beasts, even if he had the ability to defy the heavens, he would die sooner or later. So, instead of risking his life, he might as well self-destruct. And as a 9-star combat emperor, the destructive power of self-destruction was enough to instantly kill this group of 9-star emperor beasts, including Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng. Chapter 13:19. Who gave you the courage to self-destruct? However, the seal smiled playfully, and its speed suddenly increased. It turned into a flash of light and instantly rushed in front of the middle-aged man. Although the seal's speed was not as fast as the thunder leopard, leopards were naturally faster than other beasts. Boom! It raised its sharp claws and directly reached for the middle-aged man's lower abdomen. Ah! The middle-aged man screamed as blood gushed out of his lower abdomen. The seal's entire claw sank into the middle-aged man's lower abdomen, and his sea of qi was shattered on the spot. The destructive aura also disappeared immediately. I've taken care of it. There's no need for you to do anything. The seal looked at Seahorse and the other beasts and said proudly. The group of 9-star emperor beasts stopped in the void and looked at the seal with admiration. Only Seahorse looked unhappy. That bastard stole the limelight again. Qin Feiyong released his emperor's aura and imprisoned the middle-aged man in the void. Then, he took a step forward and landed in front of the middle-aged man. He chuckled and said, How do you feel? Don't be so smug. You can sneak into my Mu family silently. You're indeed capable, but you'll never be able to get out. The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng with a sinister smile. Do you think we're scared? Lu Zheng smiled contemptuously. You'll know soon enough whether I'm just scaring you or not. The middle-aged man sneered. TSK. Lu Zheng's face was full of disdain. He walked in front of the middle-aged man and took the silver token from his arms. Qin Feiyong walked up and looked at the token curiously. He then looked down at the middle-aged man and said, Answer a few of my questions and I'll spare your life. What questions? The middle-aged man said. Qin Feiyong said, Can this token open the doors of the other 9 stone towers? So you're here to find out the details of my Mu family. But I'm sorry, I don't know. The middle-aged man sneered. Qin Feiyong was not angry. He asked again, How many false gods does your Mu family have? I don't know. The middle-aged man was still sneering. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and looked at the seal. Kill it. It's a pity to kill him just like that. Why don't we bring him to the castle and let Brother Wolf interrogate him? Seal suggested. It's impossible to force a confession out of someone like him. Let's not waste time. Qin Feiyong said. Alas! Seal helplessly sighed. He glanced at the middle-aged man and coldly snorted. Consider yourself lucky. After saying that, it swung its claws, and the middle-aged man's head exploded like a watermelon with a crack. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and the middle-aged man's heaven-earth pouch flew toward him. Qin Feiyong grabbed it and looked at the seahorse and the seal, saying, Take care of the body. After that, he took Lu Zheng to the castle. Lu Zheng weighed the silver token in his hand and said proudly, Your cousin is smart, right? Not only did I avert danger, but I also obtained the key to open the stone tower. Smart. Qin Feiyong laughed. No one could deny this point. Because if it were someone else today, and they were caught red-handed by the middle-aged man, they would definitely panic. In the end, they would definitely fall into the hands of the Mu family and die. However, Lu Zheng was able to come up with such a brilliant escape plan under such a pressing situation. It was hard not to admire him. However, whether this silver token could open the other 9 stone towers was still to be confirmed. He lowered his head and looked at the middle-aged man's heaven-earth pouch in his eyes and carefully looked through it. Perhaps there was something in it that could be used. But in the end, it ended in disappointment. In the heaven-earth pouch, Except for some medicinal herbs, pills, gold coins, and daily necessities, he did not find anything valuable. He did find a cluster of alchemy fire, but it was only a 6th grade alchemy fire. The nether devil flame had been upgraded to the 8th grade, so the 6th grade alchemy fire was of little significance to him. Now, only the 8th grade and 9th grade alchemy fire could arouse his interest. Since you didn't find anything, let's hurry to the other 9 stone towers and see if this token is useful, Lu Zheng said. Qin Feiyang nodded, put away the heaven-earth pouch, and drove the castle to the stone tower on the opposite mountain peak. At the same time, on an island in the endless sea, a purple-clothed woman sat cross-legged on a mountain peak, her eyes slightly closed, and her body exuded an ethereal aura. This was the aura of the false god. Mother. Suddenly, a pleasant voice rang out. Then, a woman in a long white dress appeared beside the purple-clothed woman. Her face was red, her teeth were white, and her eyes were bright. Her long dress was whiter than snow, and her soft black hair fluttered in the wind. Her figure was excellent, and her tender skin could be broken with a flick of a finger. She looked to be only 22 or 23 years old, and her face was beautiful, not inferior to Ran Wushuang at all. Her every move, every frown, and every smile exuded a fatal temptation. The purple-clothed woman opened her eyes and looked up at the white-clothed woman, her eyes full of love, and asked with a smile, "Wushuang, what's wrong?" The white-clothed woman said, "Daughter just received news that 8 days ago, Qin Feiyang entered the Central Divine Kingdom." The purple-clothed woman was stunned, suddenly stood up, and said angrily, "Is this bastard crazy? Doesn't he know that the main tower and the Mu family are looking for him everywhere? Daughter also thinks that he is a bit too reckless. But it is said that he disappeared as soon as he entered the Central Divine Kingdom. No one knows where he is now." The white-clothed woman said. The purple-clothed woman heaved a sigh of relief and said, "As long as he is fine, it is good. But this brat, he came back and didn't send a message to us first. It is a bit too much." The woman looked quite angry. The white-clothed woman covered her mouth and smiled, saying, "I am afraid that he still treats us as opponents. How can he send a message to us to tell us that he is safe?" When the purple-clothed woman heard this, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. That's right. These two people were the mysterious madam and the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house. The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house asked tentatively, "Mother, why don't daughter send a message to ask him?" "Don't. As a junior, he didn't take the initiative to send a message to us and wanted us to take the initiative. What kind of scandal is this? I can't let go of my face," the mysterious madam said angrily. The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house laughed. "Is face that important? Nonsense. If face isn't important, then what is? In short, if he doesn't take the initiative to send a message to us, we will pretend that we don't know." The mysterious madam snorted coldly. The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house smiled helplessly. The mysterious madam suddenly thought of something and asked the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house, "By the way, have those two old things left?" "No. They are still monitoring us on that island." The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house shook her head. "How patient." The mysterious madam smiled coldly. "Mother, we can't go on like this. Why don't we just get rid of them?" The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house said, her beautiful eyes filled with killing intent. "No need. The Mu family's foundation is very terrifying. Before we have absolute confidence, it is not appropriate to make a move against them. Moreover, your teacher is still imprisoned in the main tower. If we make a move now, the main tower will hear the news and interfere. That will be even more disadvantageous to us," the mysterious madam said solemnly. "Teacher," the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house murmured. At this moment, she was not wearing a veil on her face and was full of worry. She asked, "Mother, when are we going to save teacher?" "Don't worry. As long as the divine crystal is still in our hands, the people of the main tower won't dare to hurt your teacher," the mysterious madam said. "But," the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house wanted to say something, but the mysterious madam waved her hand and said, "All right, you can leave first. There are some things that I need to think about." "Yes," the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house replied and could only helplessly turn around and leave. "Wait." The mysterious madam suddenly looked at the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house and said. The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house stopped and turned to look at her. She asked, Mother, is there anything else? The mysterious madam said, now that you have stepped into the 9-star War Emperor, I hope that you can put aside your teacher's matter and focus on breaking through to the peak of the 9-star War Emperor, and then comprehend the profound meaning of becoming a god. I understand. The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house nodded and turned into a ray of light, disappearing into the horizon like lightning. And then there was Qin Feiyang. At this moment, he had already arrived in front of the stone tower. Through the screen, he saw that there was no one around, so he looked at Lu Zhang and said, "Give me the token." "Let me go. The people of the Mu family don't know me. Even if I am discovered, I can repeat the same trick." "But you can't." Lu Zhang smiled proudly. "There's nothing to be proud of, right?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. With a wave of his hand, Lu Zhang appeared in front of the stone tower. Lu Zhang looked around vigilantly, then grabbed the token and faced the tower door, the battle chi surging in his palm. Whoosh! In the next moment, a silver beam of light shot out and merged into the tower door. Buzz! However, not only did the tower door not open, a black light screen suddenly appeared on the entire stone tower. This scene was exactly the same as when the Spirit Snake Emperor triggered the mechanism. "Damn it! Little cousin, quickly pull me in." Lu Zhang's expression changed as he shouted in a low voice. Obviously, this silver token was unable to open the door of this stone tower. In other words, the keys of these 10 stone towers were independent and could not be used. In the castle, Qin Feiyang could not help but frown. The 10 stone towers all had different keys. This was a bit troublesome. Boom! Suddenly, the tower door opened. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and hurriedly took Lu Zhang into the castle. Lu Zhang said angrily, "What are you doing? Why did you wait so long to pull me in?" Outside, he was about to go crazy. Because the mechanism had been triggered, someone would definitely come out to check. "I'm thinking about something," Qin Feiyang said, looking at the tower door that was opening on the screen, his eyes flickering. Finally, the tower door was fully opened. A red-haired old man strode out and stood on the steps in front of the tower, scanning the void in front of him, his old eyes full of suspicion. "Why is there no one?" The red-haired old man murmured and was about to turn around and enter the stone tower. Swish! But at this time, the Mu family head came again, looking at the black light screen on the stone tower, and said in shock, "What's going on?" Someone should have triggered the mechanism, but when this old man came out, I didn't see anyone. The red-haired old man frowned. The Mu family head raised his eyebrows and murmured, "Could it be that some beast accidentally broke in? But how could there be such a coincidence?" Beast. Chapter 13:20. The Mu family head said, "Not long ago, something similar happened at Old High's stone tower." "There's such a thing?" The red-haired old man raised his eyebrows and pondered for a while before saying, "Go and call Old High over." "Okay." The Mu family head nodded, turned around and rushed to the stone tower. Lu Zhang said in a deep voice, "They seem to be suspicious." Qin Feiyang said, "With this kind of thing happening one after another, if it were me, I would also be suspicious." "What should we do now?" Lu Zhang asked. "Wait and see." Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. If there is no accident, this trip to the Mu family should end here. Moreover, he couldn't sense any aura from this red-haired old man. He was probably a peak 9-star combat emperor. Whoosh! Soon, the Mu family head and Old High flew over. Old High looked at the red-haired old man and asked suspiciously, "Old Fong, why did you call me over?" The red-haired old man said, "I heard from the master that something strange happened at your stone tower not long ago." "Yes. It was a green snake that triggered the mechanism." Old High nodded and asked, "Is there a problem?" The red-haired old man said, "The mechanism here was triggered by someone just now, but when I came out to check, I didn't see anyone." Old High was stunned. The red-haired old man said, "If it was only once, I would believe that some fierce beasts accidentally broke in and triggered the mechanism, but now it happened a second time. Is this a coincidence?" "You mean someone is playing tricks in the dark?" Old High was surprised. "I don't know if there's anyone playing tricks in the dark. But I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple. It's necessary to investigate." The red-haired old man scanned the void, his old eyes flashing with a cold light. Gong Sunbei said, "This old man is a bit difficult to deal with." Qin Feiyang nodded. The red-haired old man suddenly retracted his gaze and turned to look at the tower, shouting, "All 8-star combat emperors and 9-star combat emperors, come out immediately." Whoosh! Immediately. Stone doors opened one after another as silhouettes rushed out from the cultivation rooms and gathered in front of the stone tower. They bowed and greeted, "Greetings, Elder Fong, Elder Hai, and Patriarch." The Mujia's lord said, "Go and look around. See if there are any suspicious people. No. Search the entire sacred mountain. If you see anyone suspicious, arrest them immediately. Also, check if there are any ferocious beasts like the green snake in the sacred mountain." The red-haired old man said, "Yes." The group of people responded respectfully and spread out in all directions to conduct a carpet search. Inside the castle, Lu Zhang scanned the backs of those people and said in a deep voice, "Another 358-star combat emperors and 109-star combat emperors. It seems like the situation in these 10 stone pagodas is similar." Gong Sunbei looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Let's go to the 10th floor and see if there are any peak 9-star combat emperors." Qin Feiyang nodded and steered the castle into the stone pagoda silently, heading straight for the 10th floor. The layout here was exactly the same as the stone pagoda where Elder Hai was. There were 50 cultivation rooms on each floor. 10 floors, a total of 500. Soon, the castle entered the 10th floor. It was the same as the stone pagoda where Elder Hai was. There was no aura. But in the corridor, there were a few old men standing there, talking about something. These old men were very old, with white hair and no aura. However, they gave Qin Feiyang and the other two a great sense of crisis. Obviously, they were all peak 9-star combat emperor realm experts. Suddenly, another stone door opened. An old woman in a black robe walked out and looked at the old men. She asked suspiciously, "What happened outside?" One of the white-haired old men smiled and said, "It seems that someone has triggered the mechanism outside the stone pagoda. Elder Fong has already sent people to investigate. There should be no need for us to do anything." "I see." The old woman in a black robe nodded in realization. She then returned to the cultivation room and closed the stone door directly. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang and the other two's hearts were heavy. Although they did not see everyone on the 10th floor, it was obvious that there was a super expert in each cultivation room. Now, they could finally be sure that the situation in the 10-stone pagoda was the same. 10-stone pagoda, 5,000 cultivation rooms. Among them, 3,508-star combat emperors, 1,009-star combat emperors, 500 peak 9-star combat emperors. I really didn't know if I didn't investigate. Now that I did, I was shocked. Gong Sunbei looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two with a bitter smile on his face. Qin Feiyang also shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I just don't know how many false gods there are." Lu Zhang said, "To be honest, even if the Mu family only has 2 false gods, the white-robed old man and Yigleo, we can't let our guard down." "Why?" Gong Sunbei looked at him in confusion. "Think about it, these 500 peak 9-star combat emperors are basically comprehending the profound meaning of becoming a true god. Maybe a few false gods will be born one day. Maybe there will even be false gods born tomorrow." Lu Zheng said. Hearing this, Gong Sunbei suddenly felt as if there was a big stone pressing down on his heart. It was heavy. Lu Zheng is right. These peak 9-star combat emperors are a potential threat to us. If there is a chance, it's best to get rid of them as soon as possible. Qin Feiyang controlled the ancient castle and flew to the first floor while saying in a deep voice. The murderous intent in his words was bone-chilling. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Gong Sunbei lowered his head and pondered. The ancient castle silently flew out of the stone pagoda. Elder Fong, Elder Hai, and the Mu family's patriarch were still there. At this moment, Gong Sunbei's eyes flashed coldly. He looked up and glanced at the 3 patriarchs and said, "If you are sure that the Mu family only has 2 false gods, the white-robed old man and Yigleo, my main pagoda can take action." Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked hurriedly, "Really?" Gong Sunbei nodded. "They can't let the Mu family continue to grow, otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." Lu Zhang frowned and said, "I'm afraid that even your main pagoda may not be able to destroy the Mu family. After all, the white-robed old man is a peak false god." Gong Sunbei said, "Even if we can't destroy the Mu family, we can still make them suffer a great loss. Yes. We can change our target. Let's not care about anything else. Just kill the people in these 10 stone pagodas. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Zheng's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, if that's the case, it shouldn't be a big problem, but we must succeed in one blow. Otherwise, when the Mu family's people react, all our efforts will be in vain. Let me think about it. Qin Feiyong walked to the side, leaned his back against the wall, and lowered his head to ponder. Lu Zheng and Gong Sunbei looked at Qin Feiyong and pondered in their hearts. Inside the ancient castle, it gradually fell into a dead silence. Chapter 1321. After a long time, Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He looked up at Gong Sunbei and asked, how many false gods do you have in your tower now? Well, Gong Sunbei hesitated. Qin Feiyong said, I have to know the foundation of your tower so that I can make a plan. Gong Sunbei gritted his teeth and said, 3. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He asked, are they the 3 people guarding the land of inheritance? Yes. Gong Sunbei nodded. Qin Feiyong said, but I seem to remember that one of them is the mysterious lady's man? The person he was talking about was the teacher of the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. At first, he wondered why this old man would secretly help him in the land of inheritance. It was not until later that he found out that it was the mysterious lady's order. Yes. This person is now imprisoned in the Sword Peak. And now, another person is guarding the land of inheritance in his place. You know this person too? Gong Sunbei said. Who? Qin Feiyong was surprised. Gong Sunbei said, Deputy Pavilion Master of the Exchange Pavilion. Deputy Pavilion Master? Qin Feiyong's expression froze. Li He broke through to the false god realm so quickly? The current Deputy Pavilion Master of the Exchange Pavilion was Li He. Li He. Gong Sunbei was stunned and smiled bitterly. It's my fault for not making it clear. He's the previous Deputy Pavilion Master. The previous Deputy Pavilion Master? Qin Feiyong was stunned, and his gaze suddenly trembled as he said in surprise. If I remember correctly, he gave up the position of Vice Pavilion Master because his time was up. How could he be a fake god? Speaking of which, he was lucky. Just half a month ago when he was about to die, he suddenly comprehended the profound meaning of becoming a true god and successfully became a false god. His lifespan was also extended. Gong Sunbei smiled. I see. Qin Feiyong was enlightened. He smiled and said, back then, during the Vice Pavilion Master succession ceremony, although he was nearing the end of his lifespan, there wasn't the slightest bit of fear on his face. I still remember telling him that I admired his temperament. However, I didn't expect that when he returned to the Central Divine Nation, he had already stepped into the false god realm. Yes. We didn't expect him to comprehend the profound meaning of becoming a true god. However, his ascension to godhood is a joyous occasion for our main pagoda. Gong Sunbei smiled. Of course. Who doesn't want a true god realm true god? Qin Feiyong muttered. He wanted to become a true god more than anyone else. Although he had been a god realm. He could only relying on strategy, for example, the empire. Qin Feiyong used Zhuge Shenfeng and Zhuge Mingyang to restrain the imperial advisor, and then used the imperial advisor to restrain the emperor. It was the same when he came to the Forgotten Continent. He used the Mu family to restrain the Master Tower, and then used the Master Tower to deal with the Mu family. In short, now, he was relying on his brain to move between the various forces. This situation was not a problem in the short term, but in the long run, he might be played to death. But if he also had a few false gods around him, the situation would be completely different. Because in this way, he would have the real capital to confront these giants head-on. I've already told you what you want to know. Are you going to tell me about your plan now? Gong Sunbei asked. Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and shook his head with a smile. I can't tell you for now, but please believe me. As long as you do as I say, I can destroy the 10 stone towers and kill everyone inside. As he spoke, the coldness in his eyes was undisguised. Gong Sunbei asked, then what do you want me to do? Qin Feiyong said, send a message to the Master Tower and ask the 3 false gods to come, but don't enter the Mu family directly. Hide outside the entrance and wait for my orders. Gong Sunbei looked at Qin Feiyong, his eyes flickering. What are you still worried about?
Are you afraid that I will plot against your master tower?
Don't worry, this time our target is only the Mu family. I won't plot against anyone in your master tower.
And, if you follow my plan, maybe you can get rid of the 9 false gods of the Mu family.
Qin Feiyong smiled. Really?
Gong Sunbei was overjoyed.
I just said maybe. I didn't say I'm sure.
Because many things will not develop as smoothly as we think.
There will always be accidents. Qin Feiyong said lightly.
Okay. Gong Sunbei gritted his teeth and nodded.
I will send a message to the Master Tower immediately, but I want to talk to him alone.
Deep in his eyes, there was a flash of light.
Alone? Qin Feiyong was taken aback.
He chuckled and said, Brother Gong Sun, you're not being honest.
What do you mean?
Gong Sunbei raised his eyebrows.
During this period, we have repeatedly mentioned the ancient tower, plus I took Wang Xiaojie and the others to the ancient tower. In the face of so many abnormal behaviors, a smart person like you must have thought that I have a second spatial divine artifact. You must have also thought that my real trump card is not in the castle, but in the ancient tower. So now, you are very eager to go in and have a look, but you can't find a good reason. So when I proposed to send a message to the Master Tower, you came up with a plan and found an excuse to send a message to the Master Tower alone. And now, Old Hai, Old Fong, and the Mu family's head are outside. I certainly can't send you out. So where can I send you? Naturally, I can only send you to your ancient tower. Brother Gong Sun, may I ask if I'm right? Qin Feiyong joked. Gong Sunbei's heart skipped a beat. Can this kid read minds? He guessed it all right. Qin Feiyong said, Brother Gong Sun, actually, with our relationship, there is no need to do this. If you want to go in, just say it. Gong Sunbei raised his eyebrows and said, You can say that here, but don't say it in front of the Master Tower. Otherwise, he will definitely be suspicious. Suspect what?
Suspect that you betrayed him?
If this sentence really makes him suspect that you betrayed him, then it means that he doesn't trust you at all. What's the point of following a person who doesn't trust you? Qin Feiyong said. You really don't let go of any opportunity. Gong Sunbei shook his head helplessly. Qin Feiyong clearly wanted him to betray him again. Can't help it. Who told you to attract me so much? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and waved his hand to bring Gong Sunbei to the ancient tower. So big. Looking at the space inside the ancient tower, Gong Sunbei was stunned. Is this still a spatial divine artifact? It's clearly a real world.
Qin Feiyong shouted, Seahorse Seal, come over immediately.
Whoosh. Before his voice faded away, the two beasts rushed out from the mountain stream and landed in front of Qin Feiyong like lightning. Qin Feiyong said, Brother Gong Sun is my guest. You two accompany him well. Don't neglect him at all. The two beasts glanced at Gong Sunbei and smiled. Understood. Gong Sunbei's face twitched. It was obvious that the two beasts were monitoring him, but he still called him a guest. What a hypocrite. Brother Gong Sun, have a good chat with the Master Tower. This little brother won't disturb you. Qin Feiyong smiled and disappeared without a trace. What a troublesome kid. Gong Sunbei sighed and looked around the mountain range. This place was far from the village and the herb field, so he didn't see anything except the beasts. There must be people here. But where are these people? Gong Sunbei murmured. At the same time, the seahorse and seal exchanged a glance, and a sinister smile appeared on their faces. Seahorse smiled and asked, Brother Gong Sun, why don't we show you around? Can we? Gong Sunbei was stunned and asked calmly. Of course. The seahorse hurriedly nodded. Then, please lead the way. Gong Sunbei smiled. We're family. Why are you being so polite? We'll get angry if you continue to be so polite. The two beasts said unhappily and led Gong Sunbei to the mountain range opposite the village. Brother Gong Sun, look at the mountain over there. It's so tall and majestic. And that river. It's so clear. Let me tell you, there are a lot of fish in there. Those fish are all wild. They taste great. Brother Gong Sun, look over there. Isn't that tree huge? I don't think even a dozen people can surround it. As the two beasts flew, they introduced each other. They were beaming with joy and their saliva splattered everywhere. However, the things they introduced were all insignificant. Gong Sun Bei frowned. The seal suddenly pointed down and saw an eagle circling in the sky. How common was an eagle?
But the seal looked as if it had never seen it before and said, "Brother Gong Sun, look.
That chicken is so beautiful." Seahorse rolled its eyes and said, "Junior Leopard, what's wrong with your eyes? Is that a chicken? It's obviously an eagle." "Is it an eagle? But why does it look like a chicken to me?"
Seal sized up Old Eagle, his eyes full of suspicion. Then he said with certainty, "I'm sure that's a chicken."
"Maybe it's because it's mutated and looks different from other chickens." Seahorse was stunned and looked at the eagle. "You're right. This is the first time I've seen a mutated chicken." Gong Sun Bei's face darkened when he saw the two beasts' expressions and heard their conversation. These two bastards were simply toying with him.
He suppressed his anger and said, "Stay away from me.
I have something to do." "How can we do that? Boss Qin told us to keep you company."
The two beasts were stunned and quickly looked at Gong Sun Bei Dao with a hint of mockery in their eyes.
"Get lost!" Gong Sun Bei shouted. The two beasts were in a difficult position. Seeing Gong Sun Bei's face getting uglier, Seahorse said helplessly, all right. You're Boss Qin's guest. We'll listen to you." Yes. We don't want to be scolded by Boss Qin.
"We'll wait for you over there.
When you're done, we'll continue to show you around." The two beasts flew across the sky like lightning and landed on a mountain peak dozens of miles away. They watched Gong Sun Bei and whispered to each other. Their eyes were full of evil smiles. "Bastard!" Gong Sun Bei cursed and took out a video crystal to send a message to the Chief Tower Master. Chapter 1322. Who did you send a message to? Lu Zhang looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "An old friend. We need her help to complete this plan." "Old friend?"
Lu Zhang frowned and said in surprise, "It can't be that mysterious lady you mentioned, right?"
"It's her. It's also because I want to find her that I asked Gong Sun Bei to go to the ancient pagoda. Because there are some things that he can't know." Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered. Gong Sun Bei sending a message to the Chief Tower Master alone was just an excuse to go to the ancient pagoda, but he really wanted to send Gong Sun Bei away. Lu Zhang said, "Then if you let Gong Sun Bei go to the ancient pagoda, won't the people in the village be exposed?" "Don't worry. I've already informed Seahorse and Seal. He'll never find the village." Qin Feiyong smiled. Lu Zhang shook his head and laughed. Bas. Not long later, a beautiful figure appeared. It was the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house. At this moment, she was wearing a pale golden dress that accentuated her graceful figure. Her skin was as soft as water, and her black hair was like a waterfall. Her eyes were lively, and she had the charm of a mature woman. But her face was covered with a veil. "Why is it you?" When she saw Qin Feiyong, the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house pretended to be surprised. Her voice was like the sound of nature, extremely pleasant to the ear. "She's that mysterious lady. She doesn't look that old." Lu Zhang curiously sized up the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house. "She's the daughter of the mysterious lady. She's extremely powerful. Before I returned to the Great Qin Empire, she was already an 8-star combat emperor. And now, although the aura she exudes isn't strong, she's definitely already a 9-star combat emperor." Qin Feiyong thought to himself. So powerful? Lu Zhang was shocked. Qin Feiyong nodded, looked at the young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house, and said with a faint smile, "Can you stop pretending? You mother and daughter are so resourceful. How could you not know that I've come to the Forgotten Continent?" "Ah!" The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house was stunned. Then she chuckled and asked, "Why are you looking for me?" "He's not looking for you. I'm looking for your mother," Qin Feiyong said. "Looking for mother?" The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house was stunned for a moment before she teased, "My mother might not want to see you now." Qin Feiyong said, "She will definitely see me because I am now in the Mujia's nest." "What?" The Miss of Longfeng House's expression changed abruptly, and she said angrily, "Why did you run to the Mu family's lair? Don't you know it's a very dangerous place?" "It's precisely because it's dangerous that I'm asking for your help." Qin Feiyong smiled. "Asking for help?
The young lady of Longfeng Pavilion frowned and snorted coldly. If you really reached the point where you had to ask us for help, would you still be able to laugh now?
It's not like you don't know me. I've always been like this.
The more desperate the situation, the more relaxed and calm I become.
Qin Feiyong said.
Cut the crap. Why did you sneak into the Mu family?
And who told you the location of the Mu family?
The young lady of the Dragon Phoenix house said.
I'll answer you slowly later.
Go find your mother first.
I have something important to discuss with her. Qin Feiyong said.
The young lady of Longfeng Pavilion raised her eyebrows, and the phantom image disappeared. Lu Zhang retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyong, asking, Is this woman beautiful?
What do you mean?
Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to her again?
I should have known that you're a playboy.
You fall in love with every woman you see. Qin Feiyong snorted coldly.
Let me tell you, don't slander me. I only have hunger in my heart. I asked if she was beautiful purely for your sake. Lu Zheng said.
For my sake?
Qin Feiyong was stunned. Think about it.
If you can marry her, won't her mother immediately become your mother-in-law?
Lu Zheng chuckled, his smile extremely wretched. Are you asking me to be a gigolo?
Qin Feiyong frowned.
Don't make it sound so bad. This is called sharing resources.
Besides, you can marry a beautiful girl and also find a powerful backer.
Killing two birds with one stone. What's wrong with being a gigolo?
Others don't even have the chance.
Lu Zheng continued to instigate. Can you be any more shameless? Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. He was really a genius to be able to come up with such a rotten idea.
Bas.
Soon. The image crystal rang. Watch your mouth. Don't talk nonsense.
Qin Feiyong glared at Lu Zhang and activated the image crystal. The phantom images of the young lady of Longfeng Pavilion and the mysterious lady immediately appeared.
You still know to send me a message?
This was the first sentence that the mysterious lady said.
She looked rather unhappy. What do you mean?
Qin Feiyong was stunned.
That's not right. Didn't little cousin say that this woman has a deep hatred for him? Why does she seem to care about him now? Lu Zhang muttered secretly.
The mysterious lady's attitude was completely like an elder reprimanding Qin Feiyong. What was the relationship between these two people? Looking at the expressions of Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang, the mysterious lady also realized that she had lost her composure. She pointed at Lu Zhang and asked, Who is he?
He's my cousin. Qin Feiyong said.
Cousin? The mysterious lady was stunned and asked, Someone from the Lu family?
How do you know about the Lu family? Lu Zhang was shocked.
Qin Feiyong was also surprised. Why did he feel that this woman knew everything in the world?
Not bad.
Even the Lu family is here.
Tell me, why did you sneak into the Mu family?
The mysterious lady asked with a playful smile.
To find out the details of the Mu family. Qin Feiyong didn't hide anything.
How's the investigation?
The mysterious lady asked.
Very strong.
Qin Feiyong said.
Since you know, why don't you leave quickly?
The mysterious lady said angrily.
Qin Feiyong smiled and said, It's not easy to sneak into the Mu family.
Wouldn't it be a loss to leave like this?
The mysterious lady's eyes narrowed slightly and asked with interest, Then tell me, what are you planning?
What?
Qin Feiyong smiled helplessly and said, Can you not say it like that?
I just want to suppress the arrogance of the Mu family. How could you send me a message for no reason?
It turns out that you have a favor to ask of me. The mysterious lady laughed. Qin Feiyong said, Then tell me, will you help me or not?
Yes.
I will definitely help. After all, the Mu family is also my enemy. It's also pleasing to see the Mu family suffer. But how do you want me to help you?
The mysterious lady said.
Qin Feiyong secretly rejoiced and said, Before I tell you my plan, I want to ask first, is there anyone from the Mu family monitoring you in the Endless Sea?
Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Why are you still asking me? Hurry up and tell me your plan. Don't waste time.
The mysterious lady said impatiently.
Sure enough. Qin Feiyong whispered.
Mu Qing has already calculated the location of the mysterious lady, but she didn't tell the tower. Qin Feiyong said, Don't worry, answer me first. Who is monitoring you in the Endless Sea? The mysterious lady said,
Yiglao and the ancestor of the Mu family. It turned out to be these two old things. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with murderous intent and asked, "Just the two of them?" The mysterious lady nodded. "That's good. Wait for a while, you go and kill them," Qin Feiyong said. "Kill them?" The mother and daughter looked at each other. The corners of their mouths kept twitching. What is this bastard thinking? Does he think that Yiglao is an ordinary person? Can he kill him? I know it's difficult. However, it's not necessary to kill them. What I need is for you to lead the other fake gods of the Mu family to the Endless Sea, Qin Feiyong said. In fact, his plan is very simple. Let the mysterious lady attack Yiglao in the Endless Sea. When Yiglao is defeated, he will naturally ask the Mu family for help. When the time comes, the old man in the white robe will definitely rush to the rescue. In this way, he can cooperate with the fake gods of the tower to destroy the 10 stone towers. And he can also take the opportunity to loot the Mu family's medicinal field. In short, once this plan succeeds, then this time, Qin Feiyong will be the biggest winner. Because he won't share the Mu family's medicinal field with anyone. He wants to keep it all to himself. Lead the fake gods of the Mu family to the Endless Sea, and you can do whatever you want in the Mu family. This is a good idea. But tell me, what can I get? The mysterious lady said. Don't you have a grudge against the Mu family? I'm doing this to help you solve your enemy. What else do you want? Qin Feiyong frowned. According to what you said, shouldn't I be grateful to you? The mysterious lady's eyes were cold. Qin Feiyong smiled. Don't be grateful. After all, we are old friends. It's no big deal to help you. Don't play dumb with me. Do you think I don't know what you're planning? You want us to fight with the fake gods of the Mu family in the Endless Sea, while you take the opportunity to loot the Mu family's medicinal field. I know the Mu family's medicinal field. It's enough to make anyone crazy. So, if you want me to help you, you have to share some with me. The mysterious lady said. Qin Feiyong was helpless. This woman is too smart. Nothing can be hidden from her. Qin Feiyong asked. How do you want to share it? 3 and 7. 7 for me, 3 for you. The mysterious lady said. Why don't you just rob them? I risked my life to sneak into the Mu family and only got 30%. Do you think it's possible? Qin Feiyong said angrily. These are all nonsense. You have the castle, who can do anything to you? It can be said that no one is safer than you. And I am the most dangerous one. Because fighting with the fake gods of the Mu family, I may lose my life at any time. In other words, I'm playing with my life with you. Of course, I'll take the bigger share. The mysterious lady coldly snorted. Qin Feiyong's face was gloomy. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, 50-50. This is my bottom line. The mysterious lady frowned and nodded. Okay, 50-50 it is. But now there are 2 things that make me worried. What is it? Qin Feiyong was surprised. There are not many things that can make this woman worry. First, we don't know how many fake gods there are in the Mu family. The second is the tower. If the battle breaks out and the people in the tower notice, then I'm afraid I will be attacked like last time.